Welcome in on this lovely, lovely Saturday day. I hope your all weekend is going fantastic. You're enjoying the time. You got some free time. So I figured, hey, let's keep these Scott Fishbowl reviews going because we had so many. We had so many more than we imagined. So we're like, you know what? If this is what the people want, this is what the people are going to get. So you're joining me, Jesse Moeller. I'm the only one available today. It is what it is. I'm happy to join you all, guys. So those of you that are with us, thank you for joining me. We're just going to dive right into these Scott Fishbowl rosters. See how many of these we can get to because we have a backlog of them, and we want to give you guys the reviews on camera so you guys get the reviews you're looking for. So without further ado, let's jump into these rosters, shall we? Now, the first guy I want to talk about was Mike, who was nice enough to hop onto our live yesterday, the Valley FF. So we're going to pop his up because he came in, he didn't realize he could do it, and then he commented, and we're like, oh, what up, Jamie? Welcome back again. We're doing more Scott Fishbowl reviews. We're just getting hot into these because there are so many. Like when we put out the tweet earlier this week, we're like, yeah, maybe we'll get like 20 or something, and then we'll happily go over those throughout the week. No, we've gotten like well past 100, so it's like we say, like if this is what y'all as the viewer want, we'll happily we'll focus on that. So yeah, we're trying to. We try to give it a unique perspective. It does get a little bit difficult with some of these reviews because a lot of the players are similar. But like with this one, it's nice. I'll hop in and talk about Mike's for this one. So he's in the Mia Wallace division. Had the pick 12. Went there. Hammered the two running backs, which is what SC was talking about yesterday. You got the two difference-making running backs, which I actually prefer when you're able to get difference-making quarterbacks, such as Jane Daniels in this format, where you get the rushing rewards, right? So you get both Bijan and Brees are going to be heavily involved in the rush game and heavily involved in the passing game. That's the type of players you want in this format, guys. They get all the volume. You get the bonus for the first downs and catches and first downs for run and the rushing attempts, all that fun stuff. Then you go to round 4, you get Evan Ingram, could be a top 5 tight end if he repeats what he did last year, tight end takes prices, that's a smash, right? Then you go in the 5th round, get Devon Achane. I don't know who the heck decided to let him fall to the 5th round, so Mike got a massive gift in this one where it's like, hey, guess what? This guy who could be a true stud, and I get it, there's a little variance and risk with his profile because, he was taken around 3. People were a little bit worried because of his size, but the guy could absolutely ball. He's just a fantastic player. So getting him in that offense, the floor is going to be high. And there's a ceiling case where at RB13, I love that cost. I wish I could have gotten that cost. I would happily smash that. Now we go to these wide receivers. DJ Moore, Rashid Shaheed, Terry McLaurin. They all kind of have different perspectives. Rashid Shaheed, there was a press conference that actually came out today where Rashid Shaheed wanted to basically thank the Saints for betting on him, right? And he said he's not coming off the field much at all. So he's going to be heavily involved in all aspects of the Saints, the offense, the return game, and that's what we want from these wide receivers. Rashid Shaheed was top 5 guy last year in this format. I expect him to once again be a top 5 guy in this format. Just basically, if he's getting all that special teams work and he's getting the offensive work, that just is what it is. It's free money at these prices. The floor is so high with him. DJ Moore, you know what you're getting out of DJ Moore. He's a very good NFL wide receiver. Keenan Allen's not going to come in and take his job. He's going to be on the field at all times. That's the one thing in that offense. You know what you're getting with DJ Moore. You're getting a guy who's going to be heavily involved in the Bears offense. So unlike KJ Moore and Rome Odunze, who I love Rome Odunze, I think he's a fantastic prospect. He's still a rookie. It's going to take him some time to build the confidence in the coaching staff where they fully trust him, right? And even we see this even top 10 NFL wide receivers that go in the draft, it takes them a little bit of time sometimes because they have to integrate, know the playbook and all that fun stuff. DJ Moore's been a pro a long time. He knows how to do this. So those 3 wide receivers are interesting. I'm not super sold on Terry McLaurin, but the nice thing about Terry McLaurin is you betting on your own quarterback, Jaden Daniels. You got the stack there. You're rolling with that, right? So you're taking that and you're going there. Then you get a guy, Kirk Cousins. I love Kirk Cousins in the 9th round. You can tell basically how this draft went. QB 21. It didn't go as heavy as some of the other drafts we're in the mid 20s in QB by round 6. This draft kind of pushed quarterbacks a little bit more, which gave you the flexibility not to take Cousins in the 6th or the 7th, right? You could take him in the 9th or the 10th, and that's a lot more palatable price where you get these other players where you're able to get Rashid Shaheed. You could take a gamble shot on Terry McLaurin. And then you go YOLO ball with Christian Watson where if his hamstrings are right, which is always the biggest thing with Christian Watson, the guy's a true difference maker. Every time he's on the field, he eats into Jaden Reed, all these other guys on that offense. He's a focal point when he's on the field. It's just he can never stay healthy and do that. So if he can stay healthy, he has a chance to be the wide receiver one. At wide receiver 43 prices in Green Bay, it's why not, right? We've seen the upside and appeal with him. Also, he's just a fun player. And it's nice to have just these tantalizing fun players. Similar to a Jamison Williams, I just think he's actually has a shot to hit the upside that I don't really think Jameson Williams has. So personally, like I like the Christian Watson bet there. That is totally fine in that range. Jalen Warren, everybody at the FFU loves him. If you look at any metric, it's going to support. He's one of the most efficient running backs in the NFL. The guy's just really good. Oh yeah, he's a monster pass catcher last year too. This is what we want now. Pass catching and running backs are not as rewarded in this format, but the volume guys are. So if Warren can increase his volume, get over 200 touches, which is entirely possible, you go from there. Now, excuse me 1 second. I need to take a drink because your boy is thirsty. So as we turn to the back half of the draft, you see kind of where Mike's value shifted. Brian Thomas, the potential wide receiver one, Jacksonville, we talked about him a lot. Taysom Hill, I don't mind him as like a backup quarterback, tight end 2, tight end 3 type range. That's fine. You just have to live with the variance that is Taysom Hill because it's impossibly hard to predict. Even certain matchups, they do not. So like you just know when that wave comes where they're riding Taysom Hill, just start him. Like that's all I say. You see it 1 week, you start him for the rest of the month, then it'll probably fall apart. That's what it always does. You just have to live with that variance. Demario Douglas could be the wide receiver 1. Jacoby Myers is another guy that'll push 100 targets. Like that's a guy you want. Then we kind of get to the returners. We get Cordero Patterson, Kevontae Turpin, Ricky Pearsall, Trey Tucker, all guys who have interesting return game upside, which is what you like in this. Like this is what the format rewards. So anytime I see someone taking swings on, it doesn't really matter the position. It's just guys that are returners or potential returners. And you followed it up with Will Shipley, who's potentially a kick returner in Philadelphia, along with being the backup running back, right? Like, so there's a pathway, and I know Gainwell's still there, but there's a pathway for him to be beneficial for you, even if he doesn't get all the return work. So yeah, like that. Brendan Aubrey, I mean, he's more than likely going to be a top 5 kicker, if not the kicker one again. At that value range, like, why the heck not? Yeah, so I mean, sure. What he really needs is to get, and this is kind of what the injury guys have talked about, right? So the legs need to, whatever it takes, right? And you got to do what you got to do. So it's interesting they've talked about his legs are kind of off balance, like the weight's not even in his legs, and that's lead to some issues because he doesn't have the symmetry. Yes, and if as Aaron is saying here, if you could please leave a comment, a like, review, all of that fun stuff, and subscribe to our channel, it would be greatly appreciated because our views to subscription rate is actually pretty low. So we would like to get that up a little bit higher to more people that are subscribed on the channel because we want kind of like a 60-30 ratio. We're at like 90-10. So we're kind of like increase that up to get more subscriptions on there. And then it's like a little more beneficial. So if you guys can do that, listen to Aaron, that would be entirely beneficial. We very much reward that. So back to this roster though, overall, like with Christian Watson, we'll speak that like he needs to get his symmetry and his legs figured out. If they can do that, that decreases the injury risk with him. And then he becomes a lot more palatable. But you just kind of have to live with it right now until that gets figured out. Like he's seen specialists this offseason and sent him places to try to get that figured out. Maybe they can. Christian Watson can be a really good impact player for you. So overall, this is a fun roster for Mike. Like he went about it in a certain way where you're giving yourself a lot of upside shots to kind of, you have the build where you have the guys you know that are floor play. Like Evan Ingram's going to be a high floor play. You know DJ Moore's going to be high floor play. Terry McLaurin is a little bit riskier, but you take the shot on Jaden Daniels, you stack that offense. I like that. I'm really a big fan of Kirk Cousins. Like, I think Kirk Cousins is perennially undervalued. Now, you didn't stack really Kirk Cousins. You got Bijan. That's the kind of stack you want to go with that. But there wasn't like a pass catching stack because it's really hard. You have to pay up for Drake London and this format pay up for Kyle Pitts. Like, you can't really wait on those guys, right? You could take a shot on like the wide receiver 3 or go that nature. But overall, like, this is a fun roster. So thanks for the submission, Mike. We're going to move on to the next group of rosters, and we have quite a few. As you can see here, the next one in our thread is the one from Anthony right here. So this is the Addicted Todd in the Luke Skywalker division. Congrats on making that division because that's a fun one. I think this one might be in the MFL, so you might see a little bit more different strategy with this one, but we'll see overall. Now, the 106, you get Patrick Mahomes. You can't go wrong with that. Like, you know, the floor is very high with Mahomes. I do worry about necessarily take the ceiling if he can hit it. I think he has a good shot to hit it this year. But like Mahomes, we should see a regress to kind of the Mahomes we've seen in the past. Not last year where he was a check down artist, kind of gave what the defense gave him. With those weapons they have now, he could be a true difference maker again, like we've seen in the past years for that, where he's giving you 26, 27 fantasy points per game in this format, which is what you want to see. Jonathan Taylor, that's a volume workhorse. Like, I'm not big on Jonathan Taylor, but in this format, I like Jonathan Taylor a lot. I think everything he does is beneficial. Like, you're going to get the rushing. You'll get some receiving, but you get goal line work. Like, Taylor's going to be heavily involved and should be near the league leaders in touches for running backs. Like, that's what we want to see. Now, Anthony Richardson maybe takes the ceiling away a little bit just because he's going to take some goal line work. He's going to take away a little bit of carries, but Taylor's so good. Like, they've already talked about it. Like, we've heard the GM and the head coaches talk about. They want to feature Jonathan Taylor in this offense, which makes sense because he's one of the better running backs in the NFL. So getting at 207, that's a smash. Garrett Wilson, wide receiver 7 prices. That seems steep, but really, Garrett Wilson's going to push past 150 targets, and being connected to Aaron Rodgers and having minimal target competition, like outside Brees, there is just not much competition there for targets, which is crazy. Where the running back too, similar to Christian McCaffrey, right? It's like that guy's a true difference making running back out of the receiving backfield, but like there's nobody else there. ETN, another guy I'm not huge on overall, but I like him a lot in this format because he gives you volume. So if you get volume backs, it really just depends on the efficiency of the offensive line. If that improves for ETN, because last year every run he was making was basically going against the Browns front seven is how it works. And the yards before contact, they were like 32nd in the NFL. They were generating no space for ETN to run. And ETN needs that because he's a boom and bust rusher. Like he can't really necessarily carry an offensive line. Like we've seen him be efficient, but you got to give him a little space beforehand so he can get cooking. So if they fix that, ETN RB11 is going to cook. So yeah, like I think Aaron's right here. They both in this format, especially, I like them. I'm a little bit lower on ETN, but it's just personal preference on how you want to go about that. If you could get like, whichever of those guys you like that are volume backs in that range of the 4, basically overall you look at your holistic strategy. You got the difference making quarterback, the wide receiver who could potentially be a wide receiver 1, the 2 high end running backs. Like that's a really good start because then it kind of takes away your need. Then you kind of see they did what a lot of people have done. They've taken the falling wide receiver value into the 5th and into the 6th round. Ayuk at wide receiver 13, Pittman at wide receiver 19. These are guys that like the communities like we love Ayuk a lot. We just know the stipulations with him, and it's really hard for him to do what we want him to do. And Pittman, the concern is like Richardson. They brought in another wide receiver. Downs in year 2. The tight ends getting it. Like all of these things are kind of working against Pittman. But overall, like I like it. Stafford. Round 7 is a little bit pricey, but you see here, like the last build we just did, QB 21 went round 9. And this build, QB 21 went round 7. So this is kind of what you have to do. You have to adjust. I don't really like spinning on Stafford in the 7th. I would personally, if we're getting into that range in the 7th and the draft is going that, I'm more than likely going to take a skill position player, push it to round 9 or 10 with one of the younger, like upside rushing quarterbacks, or like take a Russell Wilson in that nature. Because as good as Stafford was, fantasy production though, not great. Yeah, I mean, I like Connor. You're taking the offense there. It's like I do worry about each one of them individually because I think Benson is going to chip into Connor's volume. But like we've seen Connor, he was a really good back last year. I think we're discounting him a little too much. So overall, yeah, you take the Arizona running back and you get the guy that, and if Benson ends up taking over, Connor's injured, like there could be a situation where some guy misses 4 weeks. You're getting high-end production because we see how the Arizona offense features those running backs, right? Cool, we got for you. White's an interesting pick. Hey, we've had a few people punt tight ends. I actually don't mind people punting tight end. Like you just really, if you don't get those elite difference-making tight ends, the guys that could jump in the top 5, the guys that are getting pushed up like into that tight end 10 through 15 range, those guys are usually getting overdrafted because if you look at points per game in production, like I know there's a boost, but that's the worry. So I don't mind if you punt tight end if you don't like the guys available. If you have these skill position players, since we only have to start one of each, right? So if you think James Conner is going to outscore those tight ends, theoretically, like he should outscore those tight ends. If Zamir White can do it, I don't know about that. I'm a little bit lower on Zamir White. He's been my fade list the entire time. But like I said, if you like the volume of Zamir White, because like Alexander Madison's not great, I like Dylan Lobby as a pass catching back and doing that. But we'll see. Like White, he had a really good runway. The defenses were trash. He did that against 2, so he kind of like it's a very narrow sample size. But White just worries me in general. So it's in the 9th round. It's not going to kill you betting on him. But overall, that's just my concern with him. Like I'd much rather bet on Trey Benson than Zamir White. That's just me personally. Marquise Brown, I've always loved Hollywood. He's my guy. Potential wide receiver 1, especially with the injury concerns of that offense. And also, we don't know how long Rashee Rice is going to be out for. So Marquise Brown, wide receiver 44, similar to Deontay Johnson. You're betting on these guys that are going to massively outproduce ADP. Marquise Brown in that system with Patrick Mahomes, like you got the stack, you connected that. That's what you want to do. Now we get to the back half of the draft. Tyler Conklin, Justin Tucker, kicker 1. Marshawn Lloyd, like that's another guy that we've heard a ton of hype about this offseason. So getting him in the 14th round, like that's really good value. Like you're basically getting him 3 rounds later than Trey Benson, who's very similar. Lloyd and Benson, like there's not much difference between those two guys. The situations are very similar. Both guys can be really efficient backs. They're explosive playmakers out of the backfield. Like that's a similar bet, right? So they have guys in front of them. You have Josh Jacobs. You have James Conner in front of those guys. But overall, it's a front bet. Yeah, I think I would like to see their draft and see what tight ends were available. Like if you could talk yourself into a David Njoku or something like that in round 7, which he's usually gone by that point. But one of those guys, like if it's that type of bet, then yeah, I actually like doing that. The thing with Stafford is like, the floor's there. Like he's not going to kill you. He's not going to be like, quarterback 30 in production wise. It's just his range of outcomes is very narrow. It's unless he puts up another 40 plus pass down touching season, but like it's just really hard for quarterbacks to do that. I think we kind of, this is my issue with like CJ Stroud going as high as he goes in drafts. Like we kind of expect that from quarterbacks. And it's like, that's an untenable expectation. So yeah, like I don't mind Stafford there, but personally I'm with you. I would much rather get him later. As we go past that, the Derek Carr bet is just a weird bet to me. When you have Stafford, you have Mahomes, you have these guys that really are not super mobile. Like Mahomes is too a little bit. Like he gives you a little bit of boost, but Stafford's a statue back there. Like he's a true statue. Carr doesn't run either. So when we talk about making bets on guys have multiple outs, that's the issue with Derek Carr. Is like, how does he end up starting for you, barring an injury or the bye week? Like, that's the only way he's really getting on the field. So with the Derek Carr bet, like I get it, you want the QB3. I would much rather go get and how this draft went. If I'm assuming with kickers, like this looks like it's the normal sleeper draft, like I would get round 13, I take the rushing upside quarterback. Round 15, I get the kicker because you're still going to get a top 5, top 7 kicker. And the way I look at scoring here, yeah, like I just don't know if there's upside with Carr. Like that's the whole thing. Maybe it's there, and maybe I'm wrong with Carr, but you know me, like I'm not a big Carr fan. He's just incredibly frustrating because he has the arm strength to do what you need to do from an NFL quarterback, but he just continually just never lives up to what we want him to do. So we'll see. Maybe it works out. But yeah, like I do understand like the overall thought process at that point where it's like I just run out Derek Carr's where QB2. You do that. Yeah, like the value difference on those two guys. Yeah, like I would rather spend a 15-round pick on Derek Carr as much as I cannot stand Derek Carr's quarterback. Like he's my least favorite NFL quarterback to have on a roster for what he does. Then the round 7 pick on Stafford. But like I get it. Like that's where I would say I'd rather just round 13. If you're going to do this, go get the rushing upside quarterback, then get Derek Carr on the 15th, right? I know it's kind of nice to say this in hindsight because we have hindsight bias into this, but looking at the draft, that's kind of the one place I would make a move. And then around 7, go get a difference maker if you want the tight end, another running back, another wide receiver, whatever position you want, right? Like you can do that differently. As we kind of round out the draft, you get Elijah Mitchell, who's a good handcuff to have because if McCaffrey gets injured, God forbid, Elijah Mitchell becomes a top 20 running back in the NFL. Like that's what you get out of him. Greg Zuerlein, another kicker. This might be an MFL one because of the earlier pick on a kicker, but my draft's a sleeper one, and we had a guy take 3 kickers back to back to back in like the rounds 15 through 18, basically. He did not realize you could not do that, though. He's like, wait, what? You could only play one? We're like, yeah. He's like, oh, I'm cooked. We're like, it happens, my friend. Lave's, I like the bet on Lave late there. That's a guy you want. Like, you're taking the upside shot. He got the returner potentially, and he's also going to be the backfield, like the third down back more than likely. Colby Parkinson, I know Higbee's dealing with injuries and stuff with that, so you just take a shot. You got the guy connected to Matthew Stafford super, super late. Now is it going to work out? But no, like you take that bet and you roll with it. You see how it works out. And then you round it out with Cairo Santos. Now I'm assuming this is NFL because you took 3 kickers. So in this format, I like the kickers a lot more. And I much understand the Justin Tucker bet a lot more if this is NFL. So you can kind of see the scoring difference because usually people aren't taking 3 kickers. Like it just seems like a waste opportunity to take 3 kickers. But overall, like you got Tucker, you got Zuerlein, you got Santos. The Chicago offense could surprise. Zuerlein with Aaron Rodgers' offense could be a lot better. So you're taking bets on offenses you expect to jump up. You took them super late. Overall, like I like doing that. So it's a pretty solid, fun roster. There's a few changes I make, but overall, I like the roster. Now let's go to Eric's roster. Eric 07294 in the Voldemort division. Shout out to Harry Potter. One of the I was in London when I was in 6th grade. We were visiting, and I saw a line for all these kids looking for books. I was like, what book is it? They go, Harry Potter. And I'm like, what is Harry Potter? Because I'm from the States. It hadn't come out yet. And they tell me about this, and I get back home, and then I like find the book, and I'm like, I see what all the hype was about. All these British kids were all about these wizards. I was like, cool. So shout out to Voldemort. Now, that was a little tangent. Sorry about that. We get Joe Burrow, 111. I like the value on Burrow. QB8. It's similar kind of when we talk about these non-rushing quarterbacks in this format. I have a hard time investing in those guys because we're chasing ceiling. So if I'm taking a Burrow, and I know it sounds crazy, we're talking about Burrow not having the ceiling, but with how the scoring system rewards rushing quarterbacks, I really want guys who are rushing quarterbacks, because if you're not a rushing quarterback, it's much more like you're a floor play. So personally, I'm not going Burrow in the first round. I'm just not doing that. But like what you were able to do, like you stacked Burrow with Chase, no one's going to hate that. Like, and if Burrow hits and he hits those, like the touchdown variants we want to see, then yeah, you absolutely get a stud quarterback. I just don't know if Burrow could get above 25 points per game from quarterbacks. Where like we saw last year, Allen's at 27. I want a guy who can challenge Josh Allen if I'm taking a quarterback in this range. So like a Lamar, Anthony Richardson, these truly like elite dynamic rushing quarterbacks. Now there's risk with it. Like there's a ton of risk with Anthony Richardson, but you know that going in, how this format works out. But like you made a really good bet to stack those two guys. If you're going to go about getting that passing quarterback, get his high-end option to go with it, because not a lot of people are able to get Burrow, Jamar Chase. Like that's just a fun stack. It's a good way to differentiate yourself. So why I might not go Burrow, I like what you did where you stacked it with that. Now, in the third round, you get Saquon Barkley. I think that's a fantastic value getting Saquon Barkley. You're getting a guy in this format who's going to reward you heavily. Now, he might not lead the league in touches. He might not get a ton of targets, but he's going to give you a lot of it. Like he's going to be heavily involved in that offense. He's going to be a focal point. In the years that passed, they've taken off like Sanders or Swift, and they've brought in the Kenneth Gainwells of these guys that have played a role. I really don't expect that to happen with Barkley, because why would you pay Barkley a ton of money to do that? It just doesn't make sense. And Howie's a pretty smart GM. He knows what he's doing over there in Philadelphia. He usually scoops up value. So him going out and paying Barkley what he did, which is basically a 3-year guaranteed contract, which is not existent in the NFL. Getting Barkley there, I like that. He followed it up with one of my favorite all-time tight ends, George Kittle. I know I love that. Tight end 8 prices, like that's beautiful. That's not reaching. That's great value getting him. Cooper Kupp's an interesting bet there. I'm not as in on Cooper Kupp in the 5th round. I would like to see him go a little bit later. But you can do it where you talk yourself into saying, like, you took James Cook in the 5th, Cooper Kupp in the 6th, and I'd like that a little bit more. So it's just basically ADP related for those guys. Thanks for joining us, Jerry. Appreciate you stopping by on your Saturday. Hopefully you're enjoying your day. So yeah, you get James Cook. I'm a James Cook guy. Like I can't hide that. Like he's a guy I think is really good. When Joe Brady took over, like when they shifted the offensive coordinator from Ken Dorsey to Joe Brady, James Cook was getting over 20 opportunities a game. That's like absurd usage. Like even last year, Alvin Kamara was only getting 19. So when they shifted, like they were using Cook more than they using Kamara down in New Orleans. Now it's a little bit different because they run more plays with the Bills, but still, like that opportunity share James Cook was getting, you're getting a top 12 running back, and people are saying you're drafting him at his ceiling. Like, nah, dude, like he can get up there if he gets. The issue is touchdowns. If he can get right on some touchdown volume, like that's how he really jumps into that top half of the like RB1 status. But overall, RB16 prices, like the floor is really high with James Cook. I'm not worried about Ray Davis. I know other people are. I just don't see it with Ray Davis. He's an old back who really doesn't have a great profile. Like the efficiency's not there for him. So I think he more fits into the old man role of like what they had last year, where they had a guy playing pass protection, Latavius Murray and that fun stuff, where they kind of used him that role. I expect him to kind of spell James Cook, but I don't think he's going to push James Cook. And we've kind of seen it. Like they've hyped up 2 guys specifically the entire offseason in Buffalo. It's been James Cook. It's been Dalton Cape. Those are the guys that are going to feature in that offense. And we've seen them talk about that entire year. So overall, like I really like that. Aaron Rodgers in the 7th, you could kind of like, this is similar to Stafford and those guys. Like I would like to get those guys later in drafts if I'm getting those. So similar to Aaron Rodgers, it's another guy you need to bet where you're like, all right, I need touchdown bets from you. So like I'm looking at the roster, how this went later on. You didn't really stack Rodgers, which is a little bit unfortunate because maybe take the tight end, maybe take Malachi Corley. You go one of those guys late. But overall, I get it. Just taking 2 non-rushing quarterbacks really makes it difficult because the rushing quarterbacks are the ones that give you the entry pathway into the truly difference-making production. Now, if you wanted to do the bet like you did with Joe Burrow where you stacked with Chase, then yeah, 100% understand that, because then you're also betting on your quarterback by stacking. So that's why I kind of like stacking this format, because it's 4,000 plus teams, right? So like once we get outside of your division, once you get in the playoffs, you're battling a ton of teams, right? So this is why we talk about don't reach too much on guys for value, because you're going to be going against a lot of teams with similar builds or teams that like got really good falling value. So Monty in this format, he's really good value. He's going to play. He's going to be involved. RB25. I don't necessarily think the ceiling is there, but you get a really good floor play running back who you can flex. That's totally fine in the 8th round. You know what you're getting. Keenan Allen, a wide receiver 38. You see how the draft featured wide receivers heavily, like most drafts do. Keenan Allen, a wide receiver 38. Like the discount's already submitted to him in there. So what happens if Keenan Allen's actually still on the field? I know I have talked about exclusively like potentially Rome Odunze passing him up in the totem pole, being DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, and 2 wide receiver sets. What if that doesn't happen? Like Keenan Allen He's a target earner. Like, he's not going to see 150 targets or anything like he did last year, but he can be involved, give you production to be a good NFL wide receiver. I still think he has enough to push for one more year. If I wanted to bet on the wide receivers, he would be the third guy I'm betting on. I'm taking on Doomsday over him. But overall, 9th round, like, you can't complain. Like, that's good value. Like, as much as I've been hating on him, I get that value to it. Eckler, for me, Eckler needs the kick returning. So Eckler at RB35, I think it's fine, but he needs the kick returning to really pay off that cost because Brian Robinson was just a better back across the board last year. And you could attribute it to injuries and all of that fun stuff with Eckler. But, like, we've kind of – it's not just that. So over the last couple of years, we've seen Eckler kind of diminish with his efficiency and how he's been used. So it's already trending that direction. It's just it just got massively pushed forward because on top of like the efficiency falling off a cliff, he was also injured. He's reaching that age cliff too on top of it, where when it goes with these running backs, it really goes. The difference between say like Eckler and Kamara is Kamara was still able to get the volume, and that's the biggest thing with him because he wasn't efficient at all last year. Like, he was a target hog, and he was a guy they still featured. They gave him a ton of touches. With Eckler, that offense had nothing else. Like, it was Keenan Allen and Zach and Eckler. These guys are not explosive athletes. Like, that's not what they are anymore. That offense was just so stagnant because they had no speed. And they were forced into going with those two guys because they went Quentin Johnston, like, he just flamed out historically bad. And then Mike Williams got injured. They had Josh Palmer, also dealt with an injury. Like, it just really just backfired exclusively on the Chargers last year. So, thanks for stopping by, Duarte. Appreciate you on this. Hope you're having a good Saturday. But yeah, back to like Eckler and all. It's just I'm just worried. Like, I think the worst is like yet to come for Eckler. So hopefully I'm wrong with that because Eckler's been one of the biggest fantasy proponents of NFL players. Like, you listen to his podcast, he loves fantasy. So maybe it works out this year. I just personally I'd rather bet on Brian Robinson because I know he's going to get touches on offense, and I'm not 100% sure with Eckler being older, kind of dealing with injuries and like his efficiency falling off the cliff, his speed fell too. Are they really going to have return kicks? That just seems like a silly decision when you have a lot of young players on offense who are fast where you could put back in kick returner, because for kick returners, I want young speed guys, or I want guys who are literally tackle breaking studs, the guys that force these missed tackles. That's not Eckler anymore. So unlike a Deebo Samuel in like San Francisco, we'll see. I don't know. Maybe they like him and they go with it. I'm curious to see how that plays out. If he gets the kick return usage, I like that a lot more. Keon Coleman, a super risky bet in the 11th, but it's the 11th. It's just, you're betting on like basically him being the wide receiver one or a focal point. With Keon Coleman, it's going to be a second half of the year thing. They talked extensively about how raw he is as a prospect, which is weird because he's not that young, but they spent the capital on him to make sure they got him. They liked him. It's just they've struggled to like find another guy outside of Stephon Diggs. They sent Stephon Diggs packing, sent Dave Davis packing. The runway is open for Keon Coleman. He just needs to show it, and he has not shown it yet. It's going to take him some time. So you're going to have to be patient with Keon Coleman. It's going to be a second half of the year thing. He'll slowly get going, but expect it to be Kincaid and Cook early on. But probably some Knox involved as well. And then it's going to go, and like we'll see maybe a second half coming. So similar to Quentin Johnston, a super risky profile like with Keon Coleman last year, like you knew that you were making a bet on a risky player. Keon Coleman's a similar situation, except he's just a lot cheaper this year, so I don't mind it. I'm much like the next guy you got, Josh Palmer. Like, he's a lot cheaper than Ladd McConkey. And, like, he has a good shot at being the wide receiver one there. Like, if you looked at his – with Keenan Allen on the field, like, he was still on pace for over 1,000 yards in the Justin Herbert offense. Now, they were throwing the ball a good amount and all of that fun stuff, but he was still on pace to do it. Now, he dealt with injuries, still put up a 17% target share. Like, he was not bad. Like, people are like, Josh Palmer's just a guy. Well, to a point, but, like, he's going to be playing that X role for that offense more than likely. Unless it's DJ Chark, but, like, you don't want DJ Chark playing that role because he's about as inefficient as you can get. So, I think Palmer's going to be a guy that's going to be on the field a lot for the Chargers, like more than Ladd McConkey. And maybe McConkey can take him over, which is entirely possible because McConkey's profile suggests on a per route basis he's really efficient. Overall, it's just weird with the Chargers because we don't know how it's going to go. I think I like taking bets on Palmer and McConkey in that offense. So getting Palmer there, like he's a guy that could outproduce all of these guys up until about past David Montgomery for you. Realistically, I think he could do that for him. Taysom Hill, another guy who, like we talked about him a lot, it's just up and down with him. You don't know what you're going to get. So you just have to live with the variance with Taysom Hill. When you hear the runway and they're talking him up like it's going to be Taysom Hill week, put him in the lineup. Like that's what you want to do. He could be a flex play for you for sure, just because he's also a fun guy to watch play. Like you see him start running the ball, you're like, oh yeah, that's going to be a touchdown. He gets free. Dobbins, we've already seen him come off the field dealing with an injury post off of the significant injury. So the hype was starting to build around Dobbins a lot. And of course, as soon as he said he's going to have a special season, goes out with an injury. We don't know what the injury is with Dobbins, so we will see. But this is why I was hyping up Kamani Vidal. Like, there's just a ton of guys with injuries in front of him. And it could work out for Dobbins, but man, like, I don't like betting on these post-injury op guys, specifically someone as injured as Dobbins or as Nick Chubb. It just seems like a risky bet because you're coming back, you're trying to ramp up from that injury. If you're doing it ahead of schedule or pushing yourself too hard, you're at risk for increased injury. So this is my whole issue with Dobbins. Like, it just might be a guy that just can't stay healthy. So hopefully it works out in that range. He still has time to return, come back. Like, we're still like a little over a month and 2 weeks out from, or sorry, a month and a week out from game starting. So we got time, but yeah, it's just a risky bet. I don't mind it in the 14th round. It's just, I would personally target it all over him. Dotson, you're banking on a guy attached to a rookie wide receiver, a quarterback who's been, Dotson's been really up and down, but I think he's better than his profile leads us to believe. If you follow Matt Harmon's work at reception perception, you can tell like Jahan Dotson is a good NFL wide receiver. Will it work out? I don't know. They also drafted Luke McCaffrey, but in the 15th round, you're taking a shot on a guy in an undervalued offense. I like that shot. Same thing with Jaleel McLaughlin. He's going to play that Joker role for the Broncos. So you know what you're getting out of Jaleel McLaughlin. He's a fine bet there. I would like to see a little bit more returners in this range because I like Odell Beckham, but what's the upside for Odell Beckham? Alexander Madison, like if he gets an injury to Zamir White, or if Zamir White is just awful, they could end up just splitting that early down work. So I don't actually mind the bet there because how incentivized the scoring is for these guys that get a lot of rushes. Jason Sanders, now a kicker who's been historically good in this format because he's attached to, one of the better scoring offense, the NFL, the Miami Dolphins. Getting him at kicker 8 prices in the 19, like you like that. I don't really understand the appeal of Chase Claypool, but you've kind of chosen a few offenses you're betting on. Like I'm seeing a few bets on Washington, a few bets on Buffalo here. Like you kind of got Cincinnati thing. So if these are offenses you're targeting, you're just targeting these guys because we got another Zach Ertz to Washington. Michael Thomas, I just don't know why we're drafting free agency. You got to tell you the truth. Like he's not on a roster now. Like this is similar to like Antonio Brown a couple of years ago where he was like a free agent. You knew he was still good. With Thomas, like it's just not there anymore. So, like, I would recommend just replacing somebody else who is a kick returner or someone else who could give you viable production because Ertz, Claypool, and Thomas could end up just being zeros for you this entire year. It is around 20 plus, but overall, I like to make these late round bets that have multiple outs. So, like, you have to ask yourself, what's the outs for Alexander Madison? It's like, all right, he's going to be on the field. He's going to be playing. He's going to be getting work. And then injury or Zamir White is just worse than we expect. He gets more volume out there, right? Like, he's terrible. How does Chase Claypool get onto the field and like get work? Like how does Zach Ertz is like the starting tight end in Washington? Like I don't know why he's available in 21st. I actually like that bet a lot more. Michael Thomas one, it's kind of that. So just know your bets when you're making bets, like how the range of outcomes work for some of these guys. Because some of them, like similar to Odell Beckham, like I would just shift. But overall, this is a fun build. I would change a few of these guys. This is like the definition of a C build. You need a few things to go right for you, particularly in the back half with your guys. So don't be afraid if you hear stuff coming out about negative stuff about these guys. Just drop them, move up, pick on other guys because you want to be quick to pick up guys in free agency because we talk about waivers in this format. Like people that one day it opens, people are going heavy on those waivers. So just pay attention to the rosters and who you got because that's what we want to get. So sorry, I'm taking a little long time with these, so I'm going to speed these up a little bit. Now we're going to Pat's roster here. We have PJ Hoffer 07 in the Raphael division. I'm assuming that's the Ninja Turtles Raphael, but we will see. Anyways, Breece Hall 111 stud. He's potentially just could be the RB1 this season. Kyler Murray. I love Kyler Murray. There's the rushing upside we talked about. That's the guy you want to invest in. Then what did you do? Stacked him with Trey McBride. My tight end won in Dynasty. I fucking love that. That's what I'm talking about. So overall, like to start out your draft, those first 3 guys, that's nice. You chasing guys who have the potential to be the overall number 1 player at their position. That's what we like to see. Josh Jacobs is a volume back. I think he's fine. I do worry how much volume he's going to see. So personally, I would rather wait a little bit than taking Jacobs, but I get the appeal. It's going to be a really good offense. So if the efficiency increases what it was before last year, we get an efficient back in one of the better offenses in the NFL. I like that. David Njoku, 5th round, tight end 8. You knew the tight end. That feels like you're like, I got to get the tight end here because they're going to fall off a cliff after that. So getting David Njoku there, like that's a good pick right there. Now, the Devonta Smith and Amari Cooper back-to-back. Those are solid picks. You know what you're getting. I like the Amari Cooper pick a little bit better because he could be the wide receiver 1, and this is what I want. I think Smith is more of a floor play, even though it's a pretty good floor with Devonta Smith. Like I would just rather target a wide receiver 1 instead of a wide receiver 2. An offense that's going to have Saquon Barkley, who's going to be more involved as running backs were before. Jalen Hurts, who's also a rusher. So it's a really narrow window for Devonta Smith. With Amari Cooper, I get it. People worried about Deshaun Watson, but like the offense could be historically a lot worse, and he gets even just more targets. How it could work out. So overall, like those are, I like the Cooper bet better, but it's all bets with Lucas. Brian Robinson, a guy that's actually really early. Like I've seen Brian Robinson go like the 10 to 12 range. So getting him in the 8th, like you went and got your guy, Brian Robinson. But if you like your guy, you make the statement for it. I like it because we're in the 8th round. It's not really going to kill you make that bet. Now, what you did is you stacked Deshaun Watson with Amari Cooper. So if you're going to do that, I like making that bet because you're like, he's the guy with a ton of variance on him. So you know the variance on him. If he hits, it's going to look good. If he struggles, you kind of know what you're getting. What's interesting is you did not get a quarterback 3 on this roster. So what I like, though, is you gave yourself some options late of guys you can just play in the super flex spot, which a lot of people are scared to do. But when we get into these like Bryce Youngs, these Derek Carrs, the world, like those guys are somewhat replaceable as far as quarterback 2 goes. So instead of reaching for a guy like that, if they don't have rushing production, yeah, you just take a shot on a different guy late where you're like, you know what, this guy could just return games and play for me. So yeah, I like that. DeAndre Hopkins is going to be the wide receiver 1. I don't want to hear it. Calvin Ridley stands. It's just, I like Ridley. I think he's fine, but DeAndre Hopkins is better, was better last year, and he's been consistently better throughout his career. So unless it's an injury like DeAndre Hopkins, I like him. His value is really good. There's Xavier Gibson, a guy that doesn't need to play a snap of offense, and he's going to be a guy you could put your super flex slot all season. And it wouldn't shock me to see him outscore Deshaun Watson. He was basically putting 19 points a game just doing return stuff last year. If he does increase his role, like if he plays a bigger role for the Jets this year, this is how you get the Rashid Shaheed stuff going in. So Gibson, like I love the value on these return guys, particularly like Gibson. He doesn't even need the offensive production at all. Like you just go with that. Now you get Elliott, going to be a volume guy. Cordero Patterson's going to be a returner. Jalen Wright, he's going to be having a part-time role in a really good offense. If an injury happens to a guy in front of him, if it's Achane or Mostert, his value takes off. Like he's more or less kind of the replacement for Raheem Mostert. Like he's a bigger body guy, so he could be also getting goal line work in that offense too. Like obviously he's 3rd for a reason. Like it's going to be tougher for him. I think Achane is just a better overall player. Raheem Mostert was just really, really good last year, so it's going to be hard for him. But like Raheem Mostert's 32 years old. He's like the oldest running back of the league pretty much. So there's a good chance for an injury. Like we've seen it throughout his career. He has injury history and a track record. Like he saw the most touches in his career. When you have guys coming off that at that age, like they're risky bets. So betting on Jalen Wright, like he has multiple outs to him. Brandon Cooks could be the wide receiver 2 for Dallas. What's weird is he just wasn't good last year. So it might have reached that point in Brandon Cooks' career where it's kind of just downward trajectory. But 15th round, like I 100% get the bet. I like the AD Mitchell bet. You're just betting on an offense that's going to be really fun. Run probably one of the most plays in the NFL. And AD Mitchell's a fun prospect. The profile is just awful. But if you watch him play NFL, like you watch his video, you're like, dude, this guy can ball. So it's going to be interesting to see if he's just the downfield threat to replace Alec Pierce, which looks like he is. But I think he can do more for them for an NFL offense. So will he chip into what Downs and Pittman are doing? Maybe it's potential. So don't like it. I really like the Jalen Polk bet. I've talked a ton about him this offseason. I think he's a good bet, particularly because people just really have the Bill Belichick, Mac Jones offense in their head. It's a whole new scheme, new situation. Give them a shot, folks, because round 17, like there's upside at that cost. Like that's just what it is. You can easily beat that. Wan'Dale Robinson, number 2 option in the Giants offense. Just got to stay healthy. It's a PPR scam guy. This is what we want in fantasy. It might be a little bit tougher since he's a slot guy. Neighbors plays a slot, but Kyrie Fairburn going to be a good offense in the NFL. I like the kicker on there. Zay Jones is actually an interesting bet because we talk about Pittman, we talk about Dortch, we talk about Michael Wilson, we talk about Dortch. Zay Jones is already getting a little hype. Now, can he stay healthy? I don't know, but he's a NFL wide. He's a body, that guy that can play a role in an NFL offense. I don't think he's that good anymore, but that wide receiver room is still not very good. So there is a chance Zay Jones can play a role for you in that offense. Dante Foreman, you know what Dante Foreman is. It's a bet against Nick Chubb. I need to see a little bit more. I know Nick Chubb is like superhuman and all of this fun stuff. Dante Foreman is also a guy who's dealt with injuries in his career, has come back from his own Achilles injury. So Foreman is a guy that like it took him a while to come back. It took him multiple years, but he's back and he could do some stuff for you. So he could be a spot time starter. Jacob Cowling, you're betting on a guy that's playing a special teams role potentially with San Francisco. I like that better offense. If an injury happens to a guy in front of him, and then he gets to be a flex player for you. So overall, this is a fun build. I like what you did here, PJ Hoffer. Now, let's go to Sean McCormick here. This is Lunchbox 031, Rocky Balboa, Rocky. You went for the high-end wide receivers early. What's interesting is that Justin Jefferson fell to wide receiver 5. Y'all crazy. Stop pushing Justin Jefferson. He's one of the best wide receiver prospects we have ever seen. I'm going to roll Justin Jefferson. I'm not going to start with 2 wide receivers, but if you're going to do this, I really like what you did. That gives you a shot into 2 guys. Like if they hit that ADP, they'll be very good for you. Like wide receiver 3, wide receiver 5, you will be happy with it. Travis Etienne, a volume guy. I know a lot of guys like him. In this format, he's a little bit better. So getting an RB7, a little steep for my blood, but if you like him, I 100% can get it because the offense has told us like they want to give other guys work. Sometimes there's anybody else good enough in the backfield to get work. So if ETN does what he did last year, he'll be signed. He'll be putting up 20 points a game. You'll be happy with him. Goff and Herbert. Goff's the floor play. Herbert's the ceiling play. We've already talked about how they're going to expand his rushing role. Herbert in LA. I know we're down on. I'm like I get it, but there's no world Herbert should be going below Jared Goff. Like this is not what we should be doing here because Herbert gives you a pathway into that like top 5, right? Like what happens if he just runs a lot more than we expect, particularly in this format? That's how it works out. Goff's he's money. Like the floor is really high with Goff this year. So I like both of those guys. Waiting on quarterback, you did a really good job waiting, particularly getting Herbert on the 5th. That's crazy. Like I was gonna take him to the 4th, and somebody took him right before me. Like that's just really good value. Pickens is about the only pass catcher I want to invest in Pittsburgh if I'm investing in one. Wide receiver 26 prices is fine. Like I think there's a lot of variance with Pickens. I think he's a quality NFL wide receiver. Just needs to take a step forward. We'll see if it can work out with Russell Wilson. It's tough to say it can't get any worse. Russell Wilson was really bad last year. Like, so I don't know, but I like taking the bet on Pickens due to the uncertainty. Aaron Jones is a risky bet there. Aaron Jones worries me a bit. RB20 prices is a little steep for my blood because they've already talked about him splitting work, and I know like the last memory we have of Jones was with Dallas just being an absolute stud where he erased them basically. The second half of the year in the playoffs, he proved that he's back. It's just the man can't stay healthy. He just never gets enough volume. So in this format, I'm a little bit lower. Like I much prefer to bet on Tajay Spears in the 9th round than Aaron Jones in the 7th round because you're getting special teams kickoff return work. So you're getting that on top of it. I think that helps insulate Spears a little bit more than Jones, where if he just split work with Chandler, like, and that Vikings offense, it's not going to be the Kirk Cousins offense. It's going to take them time with Darnold and McCarthy, right? So it might not be the offense we're accustomed to seeing. So we'll see with Aaron Jones. I don't know. Live McConkey bet wide receiver 35. Like you take an upside shot on a wide receiver who could give you over 100 targets, like in season 1. Like you like that. Then you insulate with Taysom Hill. You can play at tight end. So you didn't take a tight end. You basically Taysom Hill as your pseudo tight end there. That's fine. You do that. Russell Wilson is a guy who fits this format perfectly. I know he said he was not good last year, but the guy was, for fantasy production, he was like top 8, 2 war. Like that's what we want to see out of our quarterbacks in this format. It's just if he's going to rush, that's what we want. Like it just pays off to rush as a quarterback in this format. You don't even honestly have to be good. You can just be a rushing quarterback and you will pay off in this format. So I like the bet on Russ there in the 11th. He was the late round target, like I've said exclusively. Like him, Bo Nix, Drake Bay, these rushing quarterbacks that I was targeting late because they're just so discounted. Curtis Samuel, they've been hyping him up a lot in Buffalo. Not to the level of like we talk about Cook and like Kincaid and those guys, but they liked him. They brought him in for a reason. I just don't know how it's going to work out between him and Shakir. They like both those guys. I know, like if you follow Matt Harmon's work, he loves Curtis Samuel. But those two guys, if one of them takes a step forward and like is on the field a lot, that's a guy we want. I just don't know who it's going to be. They're basically like the same guy. So you just take a shot that late, like they could pay off for sure at wide receiver 55 prices. Cavani Vidal, that's the guy I like to see bets take it on because there is significant upside. Like I know we talk about the running backs in that offense, they're going to run the ball a lot. So we want anyone who's going to be vital in the backfield. And Cavani Vidal features a 3-down skill set, which, I mean, Gus Edwards has never been a 3-down back, and I doubt they're going to put Dobbins in that situation. So who knows? We'll see. Just pay attention to camp with Cavani Vidal. We will find out more and more information. If the drumbeat grows louder about him, where like we're seeing him make plays, like that's how he takes off and he becomes a true value for you. Ray Davis, another guy, he's going to kind of play that role we talked about in Buffalo, so he's a solid bet. RB53, if an injury happens to James Cook, there it is. That's how you get a guy that is really beneficial for you at that cost, right? Jake Moody, I like getting Jake Moody there. Kicker 7 prices. He's going to be a top 5 kicker. Like he's just one of the better offenses in the NFL. It's just if they just kick the ball enough. And like the nice thing with Shanahan, he's not going to always go for him 4th down. He's more conservative in that approach. So not too worried about that with him. I like Jonnu Smith. That's a little bit early for Jonnu Smith, but I like Jonnu Smith in this format. You're betting on a guy being the 3rd option in the Miami passing attack, which led the league in passing last year. That's, you could get down with that, Jonnu Smith at tight end 26 prices. Parkinson's another guy where it's not really like it's just a tough bet for Parkinson. So you probably looked at the tight end, you're like, I just got to take the last guy. Like that's viable here. It's fine. Another kicker in Blake Groupie. It's interesting taking the New Orleans Saints kicker because unless you're like a Saints fan, it's really hard for that offense to pay off what we're hoping to see from them. So I don't know. I would rather just wait until my 22nd pick and just take in a kicker then if you're going to target these non-elite kicking options for offenses because these guys, there's a giant like range for these kickers where it's all pretty similar. Even the high end kickers, like we talk about the Aubreys or Moody's, like they're not that much of a difference maker over like the kicker 12s. I just want a guy that gives me upside shot into being that, where they still give me a bunch of advantage. So I don't like reaching for my second kicker until later in the draft if you're going for a second kicker. Personally, if you could just wait and get a good kicker, I think that's the best strategy. Like why I reached for my kicker and took Tucker in like the 14th was I wanted to stack, and I needed some stacks. I couldn't get any stack, so that's why I stacked him. But overall, like it's just I don't get the groupie bet personally, so I would have gone otherwise with that. Wilson, we talked about Wilson a lot on the FFU. There is a pathway for him to be the second option in that offense, and it's a Kyler Murray offense. You know it's going to be giving you the volume. So Michael Wilson can massively execute the exploitation. Trey Sermon is a guy that is basically the backup in Indy. Like it's kind of crazy to say, but that's where Trey Sermon's at. If he gives you a little bit more than that, then yeah, that's money. If Taylor gets injured, you'll be able to play him immediately. Similar to what we saw to Zach Moss last year, like they could do something like that with Sermon. Naheem Hines is the guy that's going to be a kick returner. That's what we want. So overall, this is a fun build. You took some nice shots. A couple guys I'm not a big fan of, but overall, like I get the mindset behind the draft. Just with a few of these bets, I would switch a couple of these guys out, move them around, ADP a little off. But overall, it's a fun build. I like this one. All right, so this is from Calvin, bro Calvin 44. He's got one more spot to go. Let me see if he actually said who it was. So his final pick, let's just go right here. Jacob Counting. Yes, we talked about Jacob Counting. So CJ Stroud, Jared Goff in the first round and the fourth round. Now he took two. This is kind of like what I talk about with these quarterbacks. I don't like Bryce Young as my third quarterback with this build because how does Bryce Young ever play for you, barring an injury to Stroud or Goff, right? Like Bryce Young needs to take a step forward. He's not going to give you the rushing upside. So personally, if I have those two guys, I have the two floor guys and Goff and Stroud gives you more case of a ceiling than Goff does. But like, they're both going to be really good NFL passers this year. How does Bryce Young ever pay off? Well, you're basically just drafting Bryce Young for security for an injury. If that's the case, I would just take an upside shot on my skill position player. If I'm going that route, because like if I'm taking the QB3, it better be a rusher guy that I could see actually outproducing one of those guys if they struggle, right? Like that's where I worry with these bets. Like we talk about the bets. That's what I worry. But I like the Amon-Ra St. Brown pick there, wide receiver before you get it. It's really hard to hate on AJ Brown, the wide receiver 7 prices in the third. Personally, I would rather just take Nico Collins in the 5th instead of AJ Brown in the 3rd and go get a difference-making tight end or a difference-making running back in the 3rd. Like that's how I would go about doing it. But overall, like you got 3 really, really good wide receivers, so you're not going to hate that build, right? I do wish we could have like the Nico Collins stack is very nice with Stroud. You did get Goff and you stacked him with Amon-Ra St. Brown. So overall, like I get the appeal of what you're going for there. The Brown pick is just like it's more of a floor play, which is crazy to say, but that's kind of why AJ Brown is more of a floor play because I just worry about the ceiling case of him getting as many targets as we need for him to be the wide receiver 1. I just don't see the range of outcomes. There's too many good pieces there. He just gets squeezed a little bit. And he's one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. I don't think anybody's going to argue that. But it's a difference where we look at fancy production to actual like NFL players. Sometimes situation matters. It matters a little bit with AJ Brown. But overall, like that's just an elite top 3 wide receivers. No one's going to hate that. Kenneth Walker. I know it sounds like I'm harping a little bit on this roster, but Kenneth Walker raised the crap out of me at RB17 prices. We just don't know if he's going to see the volume. And that's my biggest issue with Kenneth Walker is because he's not necessarily a receiving back and Charbonnet is there. And they've already talked about it. Like the Seattle beat reporters have talked about like Charbonnet could be potentially pushing Kenneth Walker for the starting running back job there. And if that happens, Kenneth Walker is going to burn you a little bit. So I would not take Kenneth Walker in the 6th round, but if Kenneth Walker's your guy, and I think I've talked to Calvin about this before, I think Kenneth Walker is his guy. So I get it. Swift, so I like the Swift pick more than I like the Walker pick, even though I'm not a Swift guy. So that might sound a little interesting coming from me. But overall, like Swift is attached to a really good offense. He's going to be involved in all assets of them. It's just really tough. I just need to see him to give a little bit more than he's given in his career. He's just one of those super tantalizing guys. The potential's there. I just get the feeling like we're never going to see him come to fruition. Maybe it happens in Chicago because as much as like Roshan, it's just like really not going to happen for him. But we need to see Swift take over that backfield. Maybe it happens this year. If he does, like I don't mind an RB24 price in the 8th round. I think that's a lot better. Now I really like the Ferguson pick, getting him in the 7th. Ferguson's one of the last guys we're going to see volume for. Like one of the last guys you can tell yourself you're going to get 100 targets out of. The target competition is minimal. Ferguson is a guy that is actually pretty good at NFL quality tight end. I know it sounds weird to say that, but they drafted a tight end in the 2nd round like 2 years ago. But guess what? Like Ferguson was like, nah, like you're not taking my job. I'm a better tight end, and good for him. Now we get into the Christian Kirk range of the drafts. he's more of a floor play than anything else. But Christian Kirk, like when he's on the field, he's going to be pushing 20% target share. And Brian Thomas has yet to take over like that wide receiver run. Like we're still in camp. Like we got a long ways to go with Brian Thomas Jr. because he's a risky profile. Would not shock me to see Christian Kirk just outscore and be the wide receiver one on that team. Like that's just what he is. He's kind of featured well in that offense. He is that vertical slot. He can do a lot for you. So yeah, I like Christian Kirk at wide receiver 37 prices in the 9th round. Like what you're getting. In that range of wide receiver, there's a lot of fun bets to make in the 9th, 10th round. Like you can go DeAndre Hopkins, you can go Deontay Johnson, you can go Christian Kirk, you can bet on your rookie wide receivers like Lam McConkey. That's just a really fun pick your wide receiver, whichever one you want to go there. Now we get to Jerome Ford. Jerome Ford is more or less the pass catcher in that Browns offense. He's not going to be super heavily involved. He was fine last year. I just wonder what his pathway is to ever being like a top 12 running back. Like he needs a lot more volume because if Chubb is healthy, like it hurts all three of those guys. If it's not healthy, it more is like Foreman's that early down grinder, similar to what Kareem Hunt was, where he like basically took all the goal line work from Jerome Ford because Jerome Ford's not just a big back. So that's the whole worry with Ford. And like RB33, like can he hit there? Like I like the bet when we're talking like Ford's cheaper than Chubb and it's basically him and Foreman. You just take a shot a little bit later. It's around 10's a little bit rich for my blood, but like we said, if you like your liar, like you're on. Cortland Sutton, wide receiver one of the Broncos. I get it. It sounds gross. I'm fine doing that pick. Like I like that pick more. You're talking about a guy that can, is going to give you 100 targets. This is going to be fine. He's pushing 20% target share. He's doing his thing. It's really, if you want to go him or Troy Franklin, I'm not going to do it with a 4th round pick. I'm going to take a guy who's been productive in his entire career and go with that one. Bryce Young pick. We kind of already talked about that one a little bit. I would have pivoted to other options over there. Curtis Samuel, fun bet, Buffalo. We don't know who it's going to be, so I like investing in the Buffalo offense because it's a Josh Allen offense. Like, it's going to be good. He's going to be efficient, so you invest in those guys. McLaughlin's the Joker. Like, he's going to be a wild card. I think it's going to be really hard to start Jaleel McLaughlin in this format because I just don't know if he's going to get enough volume. That's my main concern with him. If he's only getting 5 rushing attempts a game and he's getting a couple pass attempts, like, if that's the case, he's going to be really efficient. Now, we've seen it. He's been extremely efficient last year. The problem was they phased him out down the stretch, but I like betting on a running back 48 in the 14th round. I like that. Tyler Conklin, a guy that just needs touchdowns to go his way. So, Aaron Rodgers, give your man some touchdowns. Tyler Conklin reminds me a few years ago of the tight end in Green Bay a couple of years ago where he was like tight end 3 because he was just massively getting touchdowns. And I'm blanking on his name, so I'm sorry about that, folks. But this is the bet that we're making with Tyler Conklin. Like, you need him to pay off touchdowns. Thankfully for Aaron Rodgers, he's capable of doing that. I really like the Josh Palmer pick. Like in the 16th round, that's a smash. I don't know why he's so discounted. Like he should be going above like Samuel and Sutton. I think like in that range. Like I think a lot more makes more sense for Palmer, but people were just are out on the Chargers offense. So getting him in the 16th round, like that's money. Now Labe, we talk about him, the guy that's going to give you some kick return usage. Braylon Allen is a backup. These are the hardest guys to get in this format because you need an injury for Braylon Allen because they love Breece Hall. He's never going to overtake Breece Hall. Like when you have a running back that good, like Christian McCaffrey, Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, and those guys. And I know like we had this with Algier a couple of years ago because Arthur Smith was doing Arthur Smith things, but like it's really hard for those other guys to get on the field and play a role. So Allen's strictly a bet against Breece Hall this year. Like you're betting on him basically getting injured. And I get treacherous making those bets because I'd rather have a guy with multiple outs. I don't know how Allen gets like the rest of the outs. He might get a couple touchdowns, like he might turn into like the goal line back because he's such a monster. But the problem is he's just not a physical back. It's Braylon Allen's the weirdest guy, man. Like you like scouting him this offseason, I was like, what are we watching? It doesn't make sense. And he was learning the position. He's not a natural running back, so he's still getting there, and he's really young. So there is an upside for him, but like I think it's more of a long-term play than a short-term play, just because. When you're behind Breece Hall, like, dude, Breece Hall is one of the best running backs in the league. It's just, there's really no pathway to get injury stuff. Copy Fairman's a good bet, late round kicker. Andre Josevich, it's another guy in a Cincinnati offense, was really good. There's been a little hype coming out of him. It's really like whoever could be the wide receiver 3 or the tight end in the Cincinnati offense will be viable for you in this format. We just don't know who it's going to be. So making a bet on Josevich, 100% agree. First, I'd rather take a kick returner to get myself multiple outs. So like the Jacob Cowings of the world, a guy that can get on the field multiple ways. But like Josevich is a fun, like he's like the freak show from the Ivy League. So he's just a fun bet. If you want to look up some fun tape, go watch Josevich. He's a giant dude who's fast, big and strong. Like it's not hard to make those bets against those guys. So let's go back here. All right, Charlene in the Shell Bella 1981 Mrs. Doubtfire division. If anybody remembers Mrs. Doubtfire, that is a pretty wild movie, and I've watched that plenty of times growing up as a kid. Now, they said this should be interesting. We'll see. We'll see how interesting it is. You got Kyler and you got Trey McBride. So it's already freaking. I'm very intrigued by how this roster goes. Then you go Evan Ingram, you get yourself another tight end. You're really investing into the format. Hard to go wrong with that. The Brandon Ayuk pick, that's the one I struggle with. Like, we talk about getting squeezed similar to A.J. Brown. Ayuk is similar to that. Ayuk, if you look at his targets, he only had 105 targets last year. Like, you're saying you only had 105? Yeah, he only had 105 targets last year. This is the thing with Ayuk. He's one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. But the volume is not there unless San Francisco decides this year we're going to massively increase our pace, or we're going to increase our pay rate. So I think you're drafting Ayuk for his floor, and he can give you a very high floor. You saw he did it last year. But like, there's already hype about Debo, and we know Debo's probably going to get injured at some point. But hype about Debo playing a role similar to what he did a couple of years ago. I just think, once again, Debo is going to outscore Ayuk in this format. So personally, I would have gone Debo over Ayuk. If you're going to make a bet on a guy hitting a ceiling, it's Debo in this format, especially because he gets the rushing boost and all that fun stuff he does, right? But like, it's just more like, I don't like drafting floor players in the fourth round. Like, that's my issue. When I go early, I don't want floor. I want floor plus ceiling. Can I Brandon Ayuk get that ceiling? In San Francisco, I just unfortunately don't think it's going to happen. But he's a fun player, and if you just like getting your guys, that's what it's all about. DJ Moore, Devonta Smith, we talked about these guys. They're getting discounted to the point where it's like, all right, like, they're good bets because you know how good DJ Moore was last year. Devonta Smith, he's the wide receiver 2 alongside AJ Brown. He's just good NFL, like a very good NFL, like 1B. I don't know if he's a true like alpha, like if he would be an alpha on a team. Could he do it? Potentially, but like, he's just a good NFL wide receiver. The change, which should be beneficial to him, is the OC change. Like, they're bringing in a guy who's going to make that offense just be a little bit better. Like, it was just chaotic last year. Sirianni kind of lost his way. So they change it up. They're going with a new scheme, new offensive coordinator. It should help the pass catchers in the offense because they're going to play fast. They're going to pass more. So overall, like, I really like Hurts in this format. And if you say if it was like, if you stacked it on a different build, if you had like Hurts and then you stacked it with Smith later, I like that bet too. But you already got Kyler and Trey McBride, so don't worry about too much. Raheem Mostert, I know a few of our guys are a lot higher on Raheem Mostert than I am. The discount's already built in, so I don't mind him at RB25 prices. I'm just I dread this season for Raheem Mostert. I am just terrified if we take him too high, I feel like they could absolutely burn you. He's just like the oldest running back in the league. Has injury concern history. He just had the most touches of his career. Like, it just terrifies me. And yeah, he was RB2 last year, but on a points per game basis, he's a little worse than that. But yeah, I don't mind taking him at the 8th. I get treacherous when I see his name. I'm like, ooh, it's terrifying bet. But we go to Geno Smith. I love Geno Smith. Like, in the 9th round's a little early for him, but Geno's my guy. I think he's going to bounce back. They're going to revamp that offense. They've already talked about it. They've had reporters come out and say, like, the offense looks just completely, it's night and day from last year. They're going to more take what the defense gives them. Previously with the Pete Carroll offenses, and this is why I hated Pete Carroll for the longest time as a coach, because he was so stubborn in his ways. He had to get certified run game. Like, he had to get his amount of runs. And he had these old archaic systems that were just really not fitting in today's NFL. And it was really frustrating. And he was more or less, and this was a continually aspect with the offensive coordinators there, he was more handcuffing his offensive coordinators. He was kind of strangling them. So getting out of the Pete Carroll offense, it will be nice to see like a fresh new look at offense and what that team is doing. Geno Smith's a good NFL quarterback. Like, you look at all the efficiency metrics, Geno Smith's good. And he had the most pressure rate. On like third down, he got pressure like 40% of the time. Like, it was a nightmare for the offensive line last year. If they fix that offensive line, they work it. DK, JSN, Tyler Lockett should all be very good. Like, you have both running backs, so you could talk about. I talked about Walker being fade, but Charbonnet, I like the bet more than Walker. But like, you got Lockett late, I like that bet. And the 13th, that's a good bet. Jerome Ford, Austin Eckler, they're just risky bets. So these running backs from 8 through 11 are just really risky bets to me. If Eckler gets the kick return usage, then it like qualifies that. Ford is, I get it. This was kind of like when Nick Chubb was dealing with an injury, so it's a little bit more like, I don't know, but. Overall, Dotson's like a fun bet at wide receiver 53. Don't mind it. Ben Sinnott. So I'm seeing a theme here with these Washington. I think you were a big fan of Washington players, right? That's what this would be, where it's like Sinnott. The issue with Sinnott is you have to be patient. And I don't know if you can be patient with him. What's nice is you have him as your tight end 3. Like, you don't have to start him, right? But you just have to be a little bit patient with him. So be patient. His time will come. We just don't know what's going to happen with Zach Ertz. That's the issue. Like, you need Ertz injury. It's just similar to what Trey McBride has gone through, what Dallas Goedert has gone through in the past with Zach Ertz just basically blocking these guys. Same thing with Ben Sinnott. So Then we get to Brandon Aubrey. He's going to be one of the better kickers in the NFL. It's a solid big. I see you leaned heavily into these tight ends. Gesicki and Hurst. With Gesicki, he's kind of a big slot, so I actually like his bet more than I like Hayden Hurst because Gesicki's not your traditional tight end. If you look back to how Gesicki was used in Miami, he was a big slot. That's how he was used. Like, the guy sucks at blocking. You don't want him blocking. You want him out playing that big slot role. So if they do that with Cincinnati, this will kind of replace what Tyler Boyd has done. He could be a value at that cost. Like, tight end 28, like, it's really cheap. I'm starting to talk myself into Mike Gesicki, which just sounds like a horrible decision where you're like, no, Mike Gesicki, he's burned us all the past. But replacing what Tyler Boyd did last year, if you put that into Mike Gesicki's, like, he's much more viable because he plays the tight end. There's a massive boost for these guys. So I get it. Tyler Boyd's been kind of just meh for wide receivers. When you're looking at tight ends, makes a lot of Greg Dortch, love that bet late, kick return usage. Luke McCaffrey is a day 2 pick. Like, he's a fun bet into a rookie quarterback. I'm just going to say you're a Washington fan. Just a guess here. Devontae Walker, Rasheen Ali, Jeremy loves Rasheen Ali. Like, those are fun bets into really good offenses. They still need a wide receiver too in Baltimore. I know they have Zay, I know they have Andrews, but like, outside of that, man, maybe it's Bateman, but we need to see it from Bateman. Like, give us something, Rashad Bateman. If not, your time's gonna pass you by, Bateman. So hopefully he gets able to figure it out because I got a candle burning for Rashad Bateman. But overall, Devontae Walker, gonna see some kick return uses like that. Ray McLeod. We were hoping up it was Rondale Moore. He's behind Ray there in McLeod, so sorry, Rondale. I guess it's just not going to happen for you, buddy. This is a fun build when you dive heavily into the tight ends. There are a couple of guys that worry me, that block of running backs in that range. Like, they just scare me overall. But, like, outside of that group, I like what you built with this roster. You gave yourself some solid 4 plays and some upside shots late. This is a fun build when you look back at it. You just need these running backs to pay off. Like, I'm not worried about Geno. Like, you got Kyler. I think Geno's a massive value. I love Kyler. You don't have a QB3, but, like, you have guys you can put into your flex play. So, like, with the super flex scoring, you really don't need a quarterback 3. The only thing that you need a quarterback 3 basically is when you need a quarterback in that 1 week when one of your guys or both of them have a bye. Like, that's when you need the quarterback 100%. If you can survive that, similar to the roster we had yesterday we're looking at, if you can survive that 1 week, and I'm not sure when Kyler's bye is. I think Geno's is like week 11, if I remember correctly. You kind of know, like, you just got to survive that. As long as it's not in the playoffs, which I don't think it is, you should be fine. So overall, fun build. Like, I like what you did here. There is some risk built into this team, but you know what? That's what this is about, Scottish Bowl. Now let's go to Brad R. Lucas in the John Rambo division. Shout out to Rambo. I think he has killed more people on screen than any other action hero of all time. I don't know if that's correct, but it certainly feels like that with the Rambo movies. Now we got L-Jax, Lamar, stud. Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, both are very good values in this format. Saquon Barkley at RB4 is really pricey for me. Considering how the draft went, I would have gone other running backs because RB4, you're banking on RB1. I don't think Barkley even gets that in this direction, but I like the Derrick Henry pick a lot more because, like, I think this is what I've been talking about the entire offseason. These guys should not be valued separately. It's very similar situations. Mobile quarterbacks, you're not going to get a lot of checkdowns. So, like, this hurts Barkley more than it does Henry, right? Because he's not very dependent on those checkdowns, like, not targets. And then the difference, I think, is Hurts has led the league in rushing at the 5-yard line or inside the last 3 years by about a massive amount over even Josh Allen. The difference between him and Lamar is Lamar does not rush at the goal line. Lamar has like a third of the rushes at the 5-yard line and in compared to a Jalen Hurts over the last 3 years. So, like, it's really night and day. And I think you might be like, yeah, he gets more targets. But I'm like, yeah, Henry's got a pathway to being the league leader in touchdowns. Like, I don't see that from Barkley. So I think Barkley can give you double-digit touchdowns. I think if you want to take upside shots, lead the league in rushing touchdowns, it's Derrick Henry. Like, I think that's very much in the range of outcomes for him. Garrett Wilson, stud. I don't know how he fell to the 4th, but that's fantastic value. You getting a guy that could be the wide receiver. What a media difference making for you in this format. I really like Mixon, a volume guy. Like, I know we've talked about these other backs, Jacobs and those guys. Mixon does not have competition in that backfield. Like, Mixon's going to get what Mixon does. It's going to be ugly volume, but that's Joe Mixon his entire career, so it's not like he's gotten worse. He's just been a guy that's been that guy. And Houston was like, guess what? We're going to restructure you, sign you long-term. So I think Houston believes in him, and if they believe in him, you should too. Jalen Waddle, I like the value on Waddle. He's a guy that's really fallen too much this offseason. Like, this is more where I expect his value to be, but we're seeing him fall into like the 20s and 25 wide receiver. And I'm like, the wide receiver 19 prices for Jalen Waddle. You know, Jalen Waddle is just a very efficient, really good wide receiver. Jonathan Brooks, you just got to be patient with Brooks. It's a little bit early for Brooks than what I've seen in most drafts, but considering you're kind of on the turn, like, you had to be like, you're like, I'm not going to wait till like the 9th round to get Brooks. He's probably gone. So you figure you snag him. You get your quarterback 2, Aaron Rodgers, who I like that value a little bit more than it's quarterback 20. So You probably could have waited another round, but depending on how you're looking at this roster, you probably were looking at the 803 coming back to the 910 thinking like, I don't know if I could wait another round. So I get like quote unquote reaching a little bit for your quarterback there. That one actually makes sense. I can stand by that. I do wish you would have more like got another option from that offense, but you got Garrett Wilson, you stacked him that way. You got Lamar Jackson, you got Derrick Henry stacked. So you're stacking your options with these quarterbacks. It's really hard to hate that. Then you get DeAndre Hopkins, just good value in DeAndre Hopkins, a guy that at worst is going to be a flex play for you, and he gives you a pathway into there. Nick Chubb, it's a tough bet. It's just any Browns running back inside the top 12 rounds is just really risky to me. But like, I get it. People love Nick Chubb. So if Nick Chubb's your guy, you go with Nick Chubb. We talked about Eckler enough. Like, I'm just kind of I like the bet on Trey Benson, though. Trey Benson is a fun bet right there in the 12th round. Like, that's good value for a guy who could literally push James Conner. Like, he could push him. Do I think it's going to happen? I don't necessarily think it's going to happen. But Trey Benson can push him. Cortland Sutton, wide receiver 1 in Denver. Shiga Kwankwo is an efficient pass-catching tight end. They're going to pass a lot there. I just don't know if Shiga Kwankwo is ever going to get a big enough role. Mike Williams, that's it. You're just got to live with the injury of Mike Williams. You don't know when he's going to play. Jatavian Sanders, tight end in the offense bereft of talent. So he's a rookie tight end. I don't really like making those bets in this format. It's going to be really hard to get that volume. But Jermaine Burton is fun. Evan McPherson is a top 5 kicker, more or less. Like, you know what you're getting on McPherson. Keaton Mitchell, that just seems like we're really diving into the risk here because I don't know when this man comes back, if he ever comes back, because that was such a gruesome injury he suffered. Like, the Chubb injury was rough. The Keaton Mitchell might have been worse. Like, how his leg bent completely backwards on the knee. Like, oof. I don't know, man. That's risky. I talked about Roman Wilson on yesterday's podcast. So if you want to watch the stream from yesterday, you can get my thoughts on Roman Wilson. I'm not really into Roman Wilson. I just don't think there's much upside for him in that offense. Parkinson's a fine bet. Isaac Guerrero, that's an upside bet in San Francisco offense. 100% good. I like what you built here, Brad. Overall, that's a restructured really ability to begin with. Once you got to about the 10 is kind of where you're kind of like, maybe you could think some different decisions. But overall, you hit off early and you really took the value that fell to you there. So yeah, I like the build in the first half particularly. Like, that's just a really fun team, and you're going to enjoy that team this year for sure. You just like every team, you got to avoid injuries. Now let's go to Drew's team. Evo Hammer Drew in the Cole Trickle division. You get Bijan, potential RB1 there at RB2. So you get him at 109. Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver 4, basically get him there. I really like how you got Puka there around later than Amon-Ra St. Brown. And then you really dove into it with Devontae Adams. So as you can see here, people were not taking wide receivers. Only 12 wide receivers go through 4. So that's 3 wide receivers around. And we're almost in the 5th round of that price, actually. So it's even less than that. So you're getting the truly volume wide receivers, which is what you want in this format. Amon-Ra is going to push past 150. We just saw Puka push past 150. He'll probably do it again. Devontae Adams could lead the league in targets. Like, that's what Devontae Adams could give you. And he was dealing with injury last year. So expect Devontae Adams to be Devontae Adams. Like, his expected points per game were 19 last year. He's going to be more or less closer to that. He really needs the touchdowns and the quarterback play to level out. So if the quarterback play levels out, we should see a bounce back from Devontae Adams. So I like the discount we're getting on Devontae Adams redraft. Rachaad White, volume back. You know what you're going to get out of Rachaad White. I know there's a Bucky Irvin hive, and thought I was part of that hive, but it turns out I'm not a part of the Bucky Irvin hive, unfortunately. So yeah, Rachaad White is solid. You know what you're getting out of Rachaad White. He's kind of a guy that just falls, and you just take him, and you'll enjoy the production you're going to get at RB14 prices. Brock Bowers is a fun upside bet. I get it. The guy's just a special talent. Sometimes you just got to bet on special players. Tight end 11, like, the discount's already built into him, because if he was attached to a good passing quarterback, say if he was with Matt Stafford in LA, like, he'd be getting steamed up, right? So that's what it is. Terry McLaurin, like, wide receiver 28. It's a little steep, but like, I get it with Stafford. You get him, you connect him with Puka Nacua. You got Kirk Cousins. I like both of those guys late. I would rather have taken a shot on one upside rusher. Just because it's really hard for these guys to hit the ceiling we're hoping for. But what you need with these non-mobile quarterbacks is you need the other guys on your roster, other starting spots, to really be high-end producers, and that could happen because these guys are going to be more or less 4 plays for you. Like, and I'm a Cousins stan. I think Cousins always is a value, especially at quarterback 21 prices. Like, it's just the injuries built in. But with these guys, you need them to be heavily getting touchdown rates. Like, you need to increase in touchdown rate. And it could happen for Cousins this year in Atlanta, and it could happen this year for Stafford in LA because he's due for some regression. So we'll see about it. Javonte Williams is going to be more or less the guy that's getting probably 50% of the work in Denver, which is fine. It might be ugly. It might not be the best thing in the world, but getting him in the 10th round, I think we've kind of put the fate on Javonte a little bit too much. Loud McConkey, potential wide receiver 1 in LA. You know what you're getting there. Musgrave's an interesting bet, particularly with the injuries to Tucker Kraft. Like, there's really nobody really challenging him for work there. So I think Musgrave is like, it's not necessarily a value at tight end prices, but at that price, I'm more or less willing to buy into Luke Musgrave because he's an athletic freak show. That's what we want the tight ends. It's just, you got to stay healthy. He dealt with injuries last year. You got a concussion, things on that. So if he can stay healthy, I think it's different. Judy, he's going to have to beat out Njoku or Cooper to really be the difference maker in this format. I mean, we're talking 13th round, though. It's not bad. Dontavian Wicks, I like the bet on Dontavian Wicks. Similar to Cleveland and Green Bay, you're just attacking offenses. And I think with Cleveland, it's more or less we just don't like Deshaun Watson and how bad that offense was with him. If he can improve, like, it'll pay off for Judy, it'll pay off for those guys. With Green Bay, we don't know who the wide receiver 1 is. So that one, you're getting, like, we don't have the question marks with the quarterback. We know Jordan Love is #good at football. So you're betting on him. Jalen Polk, similar to, I mean, like, not similar to Jerry Judy, but similar to Wicks in the fact we don't know who the wide receiver 1 in New England is going to be. And there's risk about that quarterback. But overall, Drake May is a fun prospect and could, like, they're discounted to the point, like, that's wide receiver 1 prices in New England. Like, it's not costing you anything to invest in that offense. I think Polk is a good prospect. Got the draft capital as a guy that's already playing on the, like, he's on the field pushing ones. So he's already making a name for himself in camp. So overall, like, I like the bet you took on these wide receivers. Franklin's another guy. You're attacking situations, and like we have a massive uncertainty with all these wide receivers. This is how you kind of hit right on variance by attacking the unknown, right? You dive into that a little bit. Now, I wish there was a returner in this range a little bit because of how the returners are rewarded heavily in this format. But like, I get the upside appeal of where you're attacking there. Just those 4 bets. You're like, you know what? At this range of the draft, really, when you get to like 13 through 18, you see the guys available, and you're like, it's rough. Like the running backs are kind of terrible. The tight ends, we're talking about the Luke Musgraves, the John Smiths of the world, like that range of tight end. So it's like, you know what? Just buy into these wide receivers because these young, particularly the rookies, the upside in running back and wide receiver is there, like because there's unknown with those guys. So investing in those guys, I like that. Now, Johnny Smith, we talked about him. I like him as the tight end and the base of the third option in that offense. Like Odell Beckham just needs to show he's going to be healthy. I don't know if it's going to happen with him or not. And I like what McDaniels can do for a tight end. So John Smith, he could be that yak guy for you in the intermediate, and that will be underneath. That will work out very well for him. Khalil Herbert is a bet. Like you're betting into the uncertainty of DeAndre Swift in a good offense. I like that, getting him there. Harrison Butker, I'm surprised Butker went this late. That's really good value on a Kansas City Chiefs kicker. Greg Dulcich could be the starting tight end in Denver. Like he just has to be healthy. Another guy, like we talked about injury concerns, similar to Luke Musgrave. You just need one of these 3 back-end tight ends to pay off for you. And I think one of these 3 might hit for you. If you're making bets in these late-round tight ends, like I like these 3 tight ends you picked. I think they're good tight ends to target. Will they hit for them? No idea. But these are fun bets to make. Garendo, a good backup to have. And then Jameis Winston, because you're like, YOLO shot, I need a QB3. It's like, yeah, it's fine. But personally, if I'm targeting like the backup, I would just take the Atlanta quarterback. Like I would just take Michael Penix at 22nd. So I make sure I have the Atlanta quarterback. Because like at this range of the draft, like you need an injury. So it could happen for Winston, but like I think Winston's just a meme himself. So Winston's just a fun bet. But overall, this is a fun team. Like I like how you went about the back half of your draft. We're like, you know what? I'm diving into the scoring, what it rewards, and I'm trying to chase upside at picks. So I think you did a good job with those ones. Overall, that's just, I like this build a lot. It's one of the better builds I've seen today. Now let's go to Papa Buck into the Tree Warden Buck in the Goldberg division. All right, so we have Anthony Richardson at the 103. Now that's making a bet on your guy. If Anthony Richardson's your guy, go get him because you're not going to get him in the second. So when you're going in these first and second rounds, just go get your guys. They all have really high ceilings. They have really high floors. Like it's just making the shot on your guy. It's too bad you couldn't have got Josh Allen and stacked him with Kincaid, but Allen probably went before. So this is probably a hindsight thing because, you know, usually I've seen Allen go 1-3 a couple times, but if Allen was available, that would be the one thing I'd be like, oh, I could have stacked him with Kincaid. But overall, you got a difference-making tight end who we've talked about this a lot. Like I'm big on Dalton Kincaid. He's basically the wide receiver 1 in that offense. Yeah, that's a fun bet to make in this format. It's going to reward you. Pacheco is a guy. I don't know why he's as cheap as he is, but him over Alshane's interesting bet. I would flip those 2. But you got 2 really good running backs, and Pacheco, I think he gets a boost because he's going to get more volume in this format. What Alshane is just a bet on a year 2 guy taking a massive step forward who is extremely efficient. This is kind of what we've seen. I know Ryan Heath on Fantasy Points has done a ton of work on this. If you want to go look at why Devon Achane is an awesome bet, go look at that. That work. That just lays it out perfectly. He lays it out better than I can potentially tell you. DK Metcalf, wide receiver 18 prices. Oh, Nico Collins, the wide receiver 20 prices. Oh, yeah, that's how you set up your wide receiver room. And you see Chris Godwin in the 8th. Chris Godwin's perennially undervalued, like wide receiver 33. So basically, you're drafting him at the floor you got last year of price points per game, right? The thing is, like, he's moving into the slot. And people, I saw someone talking about, like, oh, yeah, he doesn't have Tom Brady. And it's like, dude, Chris Godwin's peak season came with the guy we just talked about. Jameis Winston, that was his peak season. So sometimes it's funny, like when people are kind of laying out stats, so they don't fully understand what they're talking about. The Chris Godwin like fade with the Deontay Johnson fade, like those two in particular have been the fades I have not understand it at all. Like they've told us at nauseum Chris Godwin's going back to the slot. They tried to do it last year. It didn't really work out very well for him. So what did they do? They shifted him toward the end of the year, and his usage and everything went up. He was pushing Mike Evans to be the wide receiver one on offense. Expect him to be the Chris Godwin we got of the old. So you got DK Metcalf, Nico Collins, Chris Godwin. I like those bets a lot more than like the Terry McLaurin bet, but like there's upside for Terry McLaurin because he's a good NFL wide receiver. So those 4 wide receivers, you did a really good job of just soaking up value. I like that a lot, actually. So bravo on that. Now we go to Geno Smith. Guy I love me some Geno. Geno's a really good bet there. Taysom Hill's an interesting bet. I don't know what the upside is with Taysom Hill because he's never going to be consistent enough. So getting him as your tight end too, I think is fine. You could plug him in if on a bye week for Kincaid or something like that. But Ford, Brown, Miller, Lloyd. I like how you keep this color block scheme going where it's just like block of green, block of red, block of blue. I like that. But overall with these bets, Marshawn Lloyd is basically like you're betting into that offense, a really good offense. Kenry Miller, man, like that dude just needs to stay healthy. If he can stay healthy. Chase Brown is looking like the back to get now in Cincinnati, so that looks like a fun bet. Jerome Ford, you just targeting a running back in the offense that is featured running backs exclusively. So can I work out for Jerome Ford? Sure. I just don't know. Like the upside bet seems really narrow for him. The Chase Brown upside bet seems a little bit more. Marshawn Lloyd is interesting, but we just got hyped from AJ Dillon being in the best shape of his life. So I think we're safe with Marshawn Lloyd, even though there was a photo that came out of AJ Dillon. He looked peak physical specimen. I was like, ooh, he looks like Cooks. The offense is good. Dak Prescott's going to be there, but like Cooks just isn't giving us what we wanted from before. So personally, I like the bet on Wicks and Burton over Cooks. Like I just feel like we've kind of seen the best of Cooks, so there's not really much upside. As crazy that is to say, because that runway is wide open for Brandon Cooks. It's just he needs to take it. I don't think he's gonna. Jake Moody, kicker 5, like that's good. Roshan, you're betting in the Chicago Bears offense with the uncertainty of Swift. I like that. Penix, I mean it's round 20. You're taking an upside shot if we suffer an injury in Atlanta, Kirk Cousins, Kenny Nwangu is one of the better returners in the NFL. You're going to get some return workout. I like that. And then Robert Tonyan, it's like, I don't know why we're taking Tonyan here, but maybe it's a bet against Hawkinson coming back healthy. I don't know the role Tonyan's going to play. So it just seems like I think you're probably never, ever going to start Robert Tonyan. So as unfortunate as it is, but it's round 22. Can't really critique you for getting that guy round 22. Now, these ones are tough to read. This one's from Kimmy. We got Mahomes, QB. I mean, it's Patrick Mahomes. Derrick Henry is the RB1. Brandon Ayuk's wide receiver 1. Now, it's interesting because you got Travis Kelce, stud. Rashid White, McLaurin, Zamir White, TJ Hawkinson. This has happened a lot of times with these Hawkinson draft. He gets populated into like the flex spot immediately and teams don't change it. So we're going to fix this a little bit because there's some guys down below I think you could start over Hawkinson in the meantime. Because you got Mims there, you got Xavier Gibson, you got Devontae Turpin, you got the returners in there. So yeah, like you plug him out of the lineup. Trey Benson's a fun bet. Nick Chubb, if he's healthy, like it's just basically saying Nick Chubb's unicorn. That's Justin Tucker going to be a really good kicker like Donald. This is a fun build. I would like to know where you got Hawkinson at because someone took him in the 8th, and I was like, why are we taking him so early? Like, there's so much risk involved in that bet. If you got him in the double-digit rounds a little bit later, I like that bet a lot more than Hawkinson. You have Kelce, like, you're not really tight end dependent. Like, if you had Hawkinson, nobody else. Overall, like, that's just a fun bet. You got Labe, you have Boston Scott. You're betting into these backfield. I worry about the Mitchell and Boston Scott. I just don't know the upside for those guys. Even, like, with injuries, like, are those guys going to get onto the field a lot? So that's kind of the issue I have with those guys. You also have Zach Ertz, which is a late round tight end flyer. This is this is a really solid roster. Like when you look at it overall, taking out the ADP, which is not a bad way to look at these rosters, it kind of shifts how we look at them. Overall, like you got some true difference makers in there. What you need is those bottom flex guys to really take a step for you. So when you have Nick Chubb, if you're starting Trey Benson, TJ Hawkinson. So this is why I would just start a ton of your returners. Like I would put Mims in there. I would start Gibson. I would even take shots on Turpin until I know what I'm getting out of Chubb and he's healthy. Like Trey Benson, you don't know how that's going to be, particularly early in the year from a rookie. It's going to take some a while. So until you see what you get out of the guys that are quote-unquote starters, go play those returners because they're going to give you the high floor and potentially the ceiling. Let's go to Corey Dirkson's team, the Bo the Bandit Darville division. Smoking the Bandit, baby. I've never actually seen that movie. Talked about it hundreds of times. Never actually watched it. I probably need to go watch that with my dad because I imagine he hasn't seen it. But anyways, let's go back to this lineup. So we have Lamar Jackson, 106. Lamar, stud. You know what you're getting out of Lamar. He's going to give you the floor and ceiling. Amon-Ra St. Brown, stud. Nice pick. This is really good value on these running backs. Henry, Pacheco, and particularly Mixon. Like, these guys, these are the guys you want. Like, these are the volume backs. Henry necessarily doesn't have the pass catching chops, but it's like you don't need it. If he gives you 30 targets, like that's good. No problem, Chicago. I'm trying to get through as many of these as possible. I don't think I'm gonna be able to get through all these today because I'm already pushing an hour 20. But I'm going to try to get through as many of these as possible. I'm not sure how many we have left. We have a good amount left, so trying to make our way through it. I will say we have stuff coming out tomorrow. Like we have a couple team reviews we have to get to. We're doing, I think it's the Pirate Draft. I want to say we're doing the FFU Pirate Draft, which we're going to be streaming live tomorrow. If we have time on maybe Monday, might do another recording trying to get some more of these teams. But we will try to get through these teams and finish all the teams that you guys share with us because you took the time to share with us. And if you're checking in with us, we happily will reward, we'll pay your team some respect, put in our thoughts on it because you took the time to share with us. We'll happily, we'll help you cover them as we can. All right, so back to where we were at, kind of got lost here. DJ Moore, you know what you're getting out of DJ Moore. He's more a floor play at this point. I don't think the ceiling, which we saw from DJ Moore last year, which is kind of crazy we're talking about ceiling. But the thing is, is similar to what we talk about with the Houston Texans. I just think we're in year 2 of that with Stroud as opposed to year 1 with Caleb Williams. We need to see it from Caleb Williams to comfortably bet on all those wide receivers. I think they're a little bit too expensive. Excuse me. DJ Moore, though, wide receiver 22, he's kind of good value. Oh, I'm choking here. Yeah, we severely underestimated the amount of ones we were going to get. We'll get a handful. And then, of course, it's because everybody loves Scott Fishbowl, right? It's all the Scott Fishbowl rosters were like, oh, my word. So then Aaron's like, let's do a weekend. Yo, let's do it. Of course, my long-winded ass takes too long to get through all these because I'm that's just how I talk. So I'm trying to get through these as fast as possible. But we got Khalil Shakir, we got DeAndre Hopkins, both guys in, I think, offenses that are undervalued, which is weird to say about a Buffalo offense, but people are uncertain with the Buffalo offense, right? So Khalil Shakir, if it's him, it's potential wide receiver. I mean, hell, he could be the wide receiver 1 of that offense. Is that the most likely scenario? No. But we talk about these uncertainties in these situations, particularly with good quarterbacks, which Josh Allen's one of the best quarterbacks in the league, right? You want to target those pass catchers because there's upside attached to those names. The Hopkins one is more interesting because we don't know if Will Levis is good, but we know Will Levis is going to take shots. He will chuck the ball deep. He had a 9% deep throw rate. Will Levis will chuck it. And Callahan coming over, they're going to massively increase. This Titans team is going to look so different from years past. It's not the Vrabel, Derrick Henry, Mike Vrabel. It's not that type of roster. You're going to see them pushing pass attempts well over 600 pass attempts this year because that Titans defense is not that good also. That's also the factor in it. So they're going to have to rely on Will Levis, which is an interesting bet to make. But you're surrounding with quality pieces all around, Tajay Spears, Tony Pollard. You got DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley. You bring in the ghost we talk about the slot wide receiver, the ghost of him, and it's he's a viable guy. I would have rather see them just Treylon Brooks, Treylon stay in the slot and just do his thing. But they brought in Tyler Boyd. They're you know what, we want some more veteran guy because the quote unquote floor. I think Boyd's pretty replaceable at this point. But they brought him in just to give them something another quality option. They're pretty much done with Treylon, so it's unfortunate as it is. Now Nick Chubb in the 12 is a little bit more appealing. I like that value on that. Derek Carr. Derek Carr is a QB3. Talked about this a bunch. Like, I don't get the bet on QB3s with these non-rushing quarterbacks. I would much rather target an upside to a rushing quarterback in this format. Now, if this was not, this is just what I mean by like leaning into the scoring, because it so heavily features rushing, and like getting a rushing quarterback is so important in this format in particular. Like, this is why Lamar Jackson, like getting that 106, like that's just straight value, because you're getting and like an upside to a true difference maker. And there's only a handful of those guys in this format. Like, we talked about this a few times. There's only 8 quarterbacks that put up 2 or like wins over replacement last year with this scoring. If you took the 23 scoring and translated to the scoring for 24, like, so it just shows you like how vital those rushers are. And they were basically all rushers except like Brock Purdy. Like, there was like, that's literally the only other. And it's interesting. Like, you need these guys to have massive touchdown seasons, and it's not gonna happen for Carr. Like, that's just never in Carr's bag. Like, he just never throws for a lot of touchdowns. So I think he's got over 30, or his career high might be 29. Like, I think he maybe got over 31 season, or it's right in that range where it's like he just never throws for a lot of touchdowns. That's how Derek Carr does. So interesting enough, like, he's gonna be a check down magnet for once again for Alvin Kamara, and that just ugly volume. But it is what it is. The Saints are kind of I do appreciate them kind of changing the scheme a little bit. I want to see them kind of break away from being so heavily dependent on like Alvin Kamara being that explosive player, because he's not that player anymore. So we'll see. Noah Fant, I mean, it's fine in the 14th round. It's a little early, but you can see when you get to this range of tight end, you're like looking around, you're like, dude, there's nobody left, because you had all the tight ends go in front of you, and you're like, I need another tight end because you only have Cole Kmet, right? I will say, like, this tight end room terrifies the crap out of me. Cole Kmet being the 4th option in that offense. He's a rookie quarterback. Like, we need to see, like, it's really hard for Cole Kmet to be a guy you're confidently starting. And I get it, it's tight end 16, but I would not take him at tight end 16. I don't think he has that ceiling in his range of outcome. So the Fant and Kmet bets are like, it's kind of a similar bet where you're betting on the 4th option in an offense. And could it work out? Yeah, sure. But like, what's the upside for those guys? So that you need the other positions to carry you. Thankfully, you're pretty stacked with that running back room. Like, you got Monty, you got those 3. The wide receivers, you're looking pretty solid. Like, I like that overall. And you got Lamar Jackson. So, and then this is what I like where teams do. They lean into the returners. That's the earliest I've seen Duvernay go by rounds. So you were going after like Dameon Pierce, potential kick returner. Devin Duvernay. I mean, we get into these late rounds. It really doesn't matter ADP too much. It's just about getting your guys. Devontae Turpin, a guy that might do both things for Dallas. We'd like to see. Sam Darnold, another upside shot into seeing how long he can start. Darnell Mooney is another guy that's just going, people don't really care about, even though it's Kirk Cousins' offense, they're going to pass it a bajillion amount of times. So, yeah, I think we should like Darnell Mooney. Kenny Nwangu, returner, one of the better returners in the NFL. I like that. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like it's going to happen for Rondale Moore, but I like the bet into that, like we're talking about a returner, right? And Velus Jones, we'll see if he's a returner in Chicago. If he is, she'll work out for him. The type of guy that doesn't need a role offensively. So if you're betting on these returners and they don't need a role, like that's the thing. While we talk about the upside of the returner, the floor for returners is also really high. Like, guys don't even need a role offensively to be flex-worthy players for you. So that's the thing. If Velus Jones is just returning, if he is the standard kick returner, not splitting work, like that's fine. It'll give you at least 10 points per game, like on average. Like some of these kick returners getting 13, 15 points per game just on kick returns alone, like doing that. Then you add the punt returner, and then you get like some offense. That's how you get these guys that are pushing 20 plus points per game, like Shaheed Mims and stuff like that, right? So these are interesting bets. I like those bets. It's a fun build. I really wish that tight end room was a little bit different in the quarterback 3, because you could like, does Derek Carr ever get on the field for you outside of the bye week? Like, I know you're taking a QB3 there for the bye week, but does like a Derek Carr ever get on the field for you? Are you going to start him over Kirk Cousins or Lamar Jackson? And if you find yourself saying like no, then like, that's what I mean. Like, don't target those guys in this format, because it's really hard for those guys to get on the field. But overall, I like this build for the most part. I just tinker with a couple things, and I think you would be cooking with gas. You went after the returners late. You got some running backs. Like, you got some high-end wide receivers. Like, that's a fun build. Now, let's go to Cole Granger in the Cole Trickle. I like how Cole is in the Cole division. Shout out to you for doing that. I was wondering if you're like just a big Cole Trickle fan, or if you're like, you know what? I'm just going to go after the Cole division because it is my first name. So, we got Tyreek Hill. Now, this is an interesting bet, and people probably think you're crazy. I actually don't think you're crazy. Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb are the 2 guys that were, like, massively giving you advantage at the position, the only 2 wide receivers. The thing about Tyreek Hill is just the age and injuries. That's the only thing that worries me. The Mike McDaniel scheme, what this scheme does for these wide receivers is it gives them an ability to be incredibly efficient. And Tyreek Hill is one of the most efficient wide receivers in the NFL. So this is why Tyreek Hill is so special in the Miami offense, because the McDaniel scheme allows him to just be absolutely just a terror. Where you see any metric, you look on a yards per route run or like versus zone and man, Tyreek Hill is leaps and bounds with everyone because it's the skill plus the situation. So I get it. If you're a warp guy, which it looks like you might be taking Tyreek Hill one, then like that's what we're talking about. Kincaid, another one of the last like bets at tight end where you could be like, yeah, this guy can finish tight end. I like that bet there. Really fun. I do worry about the Tua pick with Love. Like we talk about these the non-rushing quarterbacks. It's a little bit riskier with those guys, but I see where you're like, all right, man, these quarterbacks are getting risky. With the Tua pick though, like the difference between him and Love is Love showed us that ceiling. We have not seen it from Tua like for an extended period of time. He had a short window where he was cooking and then it just kind of fell off a cliff. Even though he led the league in passing, it's not just passing. Like it's pretty cool in the Scott Fishbowl scoring. Like you got to do more than just be a good passer. Like you got to give us more than that. So I worry about the Tua pick. That one feels like you reached on need and you didn't necessarily have to take Tua. Like you probably could have got a quarterback 2 you would have liked were Evans or Mixon or even Christian Kirk gone. Because in the 4th round, only 12 quarterbacks have gone. That means like they're not really getting pushed exclusively. Because a couple of these drafts, we're talking QB 11 by pick 12, like the 212. So just knowing your draft, and I know I've been there where I get the FOMO. I'm like, oh, I got to reach here. Like I've been there. Just be careful when you do that. Mike Evans, a guy that you know what you're getting out of. Mike Evans in the 5th round, that's just free money. You can print that. Joe Mixon, really good value there. RB17, you know what you're getting. The Kirk and Reed bets are really interesting because Reed, my whole issue with Jaden Reed is he basically was not on the field in 2 wide receiver sets last year. Like played a handful of snaps in that. If he can get on the field in 2 wide receiver sets, the issue is with Dobbs is going to play that like sacrificial X they talk about where he's going to be on the field. They like him. They clearly value him. So he's going to be on the field. Then that leaves one other wide receiver spot outside of when they're playing 3 wide receiver sets, right? So is he going to be playing over Watson? Is he going to be playing over like Wicks? Is he going to be playing over Bo Melton? If he's not, he's going to be a little handcuffed. But he's a year 2 wide receiver who was really good as a rookie. Similar to the year before Christian Watson, it was the same thing where we saw a guy showing up. We're like, yep, this guy's good. Bet on him here. I think Jaden Reed's just a more complete player than Christian Watson. If that makes sense, you could do a little bit more. So we'll see. I don't know. Like maybe it works out, but wide receiver 33, it's not costing you a lot to make that bet on a potentially good wide receiver. You could look back and be very happy, or you could look back and Jaden Reed's like your wide receiver 40. Like his range of outcomes feel kind of big. I just don't know what his ceiling is, I guess that's similar to Christian Kirk. If like Kirk is a more narrow window, like the floor's a lot higher with Kirk. The ceiling might not be there. Reed kind of extends it both ways a little bit more. Gus Edwards is I struggle with Gus Edwards. I just don't want to pick him right there because what's the upside of Gus Edwards? Even last year, like in standard scoring, he was just giving you 12 points a game. Like that's like running back 36 production. So like, yeah, Gus Edwards is tough. Like this is what I struggle with Edwards. And these guys like that are not volume for both ways. He saw a career high in touches last year. And yeah, he stayed healthy, but he's also older back. So I don't know. Is he going to hit it? Maybe, but that's just kind of what I'm worried about. I'm looking at his production last year. Like last year, he gave you 15 points per game in the scoring with this, which is fine. I just don't know where we're going to see that volume again from him. Now there's basically nobody in that backfield besides Kamani Vidal. Jarrett Patterson's getting a little hype. Like it's that for him, but he's also already dealing with an injury. Like it's so weird in an offense tethered to a quarterback as good as Justin Herbert. We're so terrified of all of the options in an offense. Like even Lat McConkey's going really late. Like Josh Palmer, the tight ends were like, nope. The running back room is just like it could be a rough year for the Chargers. I think they're going to be a lot better because Greg Roman raises the floor and kind of brings the ceiling down a little bit. He kind of narrows the window for that offense. Like they're going to run, they're going to do a lot of things. Herbert's going to be out moving, he's going to be running, stuff of that nature. But yeah, I don't know what the upside is for Gus Edwards. Is the way I'll phrase it. Like, can he give you 20 points per game? Like, I don't think so. You need him to be like Raheem Mostert with touchdowns, and that's just asking a lot for any running back to do that. Taysom Hill, I'm like, this is what we talked about. Taysom Hill, I really want to like narrow down too much. I'll just go to Chase Brown. Chase Brown, fun bet. He's running with the ones more and more, so it looks like Chase Brown is back to get in the backfield. But theoretically, just target both guys because they're going to be viable for you. Like whoever the running back 1 is in Cincinnati is going to outscore Gus Edwards. Like I'll just say that much. Xavier Legette is has the nickname of XL. So if you give me the nickname of XL, I'm already intrigued. I'm like, ooh, there goes XL. And you're like, ooh, XL? What's up? And they're kind of involving him in the offense. Like, I know people are like, oh, Thielen. Like, I'm like, dude, no. Thielen is old. He fell after the year because that's what old, like, kind of wide receivers kind of like falling their way out of the league. Like, I can't believe that was the guy they featured to go get the Thielen. And we talk about PPR scams. That was Thielen last year. He's not going to be that guy this year. I think they're going to absolutely pepper Deontay with targets. And then they're going to try to integrate Xavier Legette in multiple different ways because they have that mold of wide receiver. They like, you look at Mingo, they target Terrace Marshall. These are the guys they've targeted over the years. They might have found it with Xavier Legette. He's just a risky bet, man. But like his last season was just so good. Even looking at like JJ Zacharyason's prospect model, like he had him really high in rankings. By really high, I mean he's like wide receiver like 7 or something. But like it's a lot higher than you would expect for a profile as bad as his was before because he did nothing before his last year. But that season was just so good. So it's like, all right, man, if we see more of that from Legette and the whole backstory of Legette, he's just a guy I would recommend reading up on and getting some history with because he has a fun backstory. It's just like you get to know this player a little bit more and you're like, all right, you kind of root for this guy a little bit. Now, am I going to raise him up in my rankings? No, I'm not saying that. But like just getting to know a little bit more than just a name on a sheet. I like to do that with these players so you get a little backstory on these guys. Gardner Minshew, like when you already have those two guys, like this is what we talk about with Carr and those guys. I just think it's a worse bet with Minshew. I don't think you're ever going to be confidently starting Gardner Minshew. Even on a week when you have Tua and Love on a bye, I think you would rather just start a Kenny Nwangwu or a Will Shipley or Cordero Patterson over Minshew because he was rough last year, man. Like he was not doing good. So it's tough. He gave you 12 points per game last year. And like, what's the upside in that? Like, I think when we draft these guys based on need, but like when you try to actually put them in your lineup, I would just recommend not going the Gardner Minshew route because you can still target guys, but the guys going in that round 13, round 12, there's upside for them to be difference makers in your lineup. So personally, if I've reached that point, and then when you took Taysom Hill, who you could also play in your super flex spot, it's kind of the same bet to Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill gives you that little bit more weekly upside, but overall, he just theoretically most weeks he's not going to give it to you. Well, Gardner Minshew's not going to give it to you. So yeah, Gardner Minshew, I'm not a big fan of those quarterback threes unless they give me the upside of rushing. If they don't have it, Minshew doesn't rush. So Minshew's a vibe. Like I like the vibe when you see him do all the photo shoots and all that fun stuff. But yeah, Colby Parkinson could be tied at 1 in LA. What's that mean? I don't know. A guy that we're kind of just taking. The Pearsall bet is a fun bet, but he's already dealing with an injury. He's buried. He needs that special teams work. So if he gets special teams work, he can be valuable for you. If not, like he might just be a 0 for you the entire year. Like that's just kind of what we're dealing with Ricky Pearsall. And that's unfortunate. Hopefully he gets involved a little bit more. He passes Juwan Jennings on the road. But like rookies that struggle with injuries early in the season, this happened in JSN last year, it takes them a long time to develop because they're not getting into the playbook or they're not memorizing. It's just harder for those guys. So I'm hyped for Ricky Pearsall long term, but like this season could already be derailed dealing with multiple injuries and just being behind the 8 ball. And he's buried, like he's not getting on the field. So these rookies that are not getting on the field, and then on the flip side with the Roman Wilsons of the world, can that offense support anyone besides George Pickens in the passing game? Maybe it's Pat Freiermuth, and with the scoring beneficial to tight ends, I would much rather go Freiermuth. I mean, he's long gone by this point because you're talking about tight end 25 probably. But I get it. You're targeting a rookie. Of the rookie upside, he's not going to play in 2 wide receiver sets. If he's not playing 2 wide receiver sets, they're not going to run a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. What they are going to run a lot of is 12 and 13 personnel with just 2 and 3 tight ends on the field. So it could be a rude awakening for Roman Wilson. I hope to be wrong for him on that. But like overall, like once he went to Pittsburgh, similar to A.D. Mitchell being in Indianapolis, those are 2 spots I was like, ooh, I don't like those landing spots for those guys. So we'll see. Maybe it works out. But Estime could potentially give you more volume. Like I like that pick. I like Shipley because kick return usage. Cordero Patterson, Kenny Nwangwu, all kick return usage. Joe Flacco, the GOAT, baby. Joe Flacco. Yeah, I'd much rather have Joe Flacco as the backup than just the Gardner Minshew pick. Like I would just rather just do that if I'm going that range of outcomes. Jake Elliott. I don't know why he's kicker 12. That seems way too low for Elliott and to be one of the better offenses in the league. Yeah, I like that. There's a couple picks where I'm kind of like, ooh, but overall, you can talk yourself into this roster. It's not my cup of tea with a lot of these guys, but overall, as long as those first half hits, that's all that really matters. If the first half does well for you, your team will be fine. And then you just need like 1 or 2 guys on the back half to really carry, like to really step forward. And then that's how your teams start cooking. Obviously, there's injuries, but there's injuries off to worry about. So it is what it is. All right, we have reached the hour 38 minute. Running out a little bit of time here, so I'm gonna do maybe like 1 or 2 more and wrap it up for y'all. So let us go down to Ryan Adams, baby. Oh man, I got a long ways to go with these, so I need to speed these up. All right, Ryan Adams, the Grizzly Adams 21 in the Allen division. I don't know necessarily what division that is. So the Allen division is, I don't know. I'll have to look that up. So, anyways, pretty solid. Dak Prescott. Yeah, I like if we're talking about quarterbacks, I like Dak Prescott the 208 as opposed to like a Joe Burrow 111. Like, give me that Dak Prescott in the second. Much better pick. Personally, I like that. Because, I mean, he could outscore a lot. He was awesome in this format last year. And if he comes 80% of the way to the second half of last year, like, he's going to be an awesome pick at quarterback now for you. Mark Andrews in the third. Really good value on Andrews. You know he's a stud when he's healthy and on the field. Pacheco, we talked about Pacheco a lot. Ferguson, another one of the last tight ends who can give you 100 targets in an offense. Should be good for you. Jalen Waddle, just a good value in Jalen Waddle. Ramondre Stevenson should be a volume back. I know people talk about the offense being gross. What happens if the offense is better than we expect? Like, that's the whole thing with these guys. If you're getting a volume back like Ramondre, I think in this format, the floor is there. He gives you a pathway into some like higher end production. So Ramondre at RB21 prices, I'm on board with it. Ooh, Rashid Shaheed in the 9th round. Come on, man. I took this guy in the 5th round. And I knew I had to reach for him just because I was like, I'm not walking away without Rashid Shaheed in this league. Getting Rashid Shaheed in the 9th round. But this is what I'm more mean by like reaching for players. And what this happens is you see people get guys at decent value and guys where you reach like I did for Shaheed. And I knew this was a bad pick to do it, but I was like, I'm getting Shaheed because it's still good value. When you're going against other teams when you get in the playoffs, this is the stuff you're going to run into. So you're going to run into teams that have your similar guys just at later ADPs because they took the value. So this is why we say don't reach for guys a lot in this format, similar to best ball, because you're competing against a massive field of teams. Yeah, I like the Reed pick is fine. I like the Shaheed pick is an absolute smash. And we saw Shaheed's ADP, like once it's kicked off, it was in like the teens. It started climbing and climbing and climbing. Same thing with Marvin Mims. People started to realize, and people in podcasts such as myself were like, draft these guys. Freaking draft these guys. So they started climbing up to the 7th and 6th round. So it's like, you got to take them now. So congrats to Grizzly Adams. That's a fantastic pick. You're going to love that pick as long as he stays healthy. Like, this is with everybody staying healthy, right? Drake May, I like that pick in the 10th. You're taking the shot on the rushing upside. Drake May has a really good rushing profile. It might surprise people because he's just a prototypical white dude from North Carolina, but the guy can move. So yeah, I like the upside on him on that. Gus Edwards we talked about him. He's a little bit cheaper there. I don't mind. I just don't see the upside with him. He's more forward play. Khalil Shakir, Xavier Leggett. Similar upside bets into offenses. The Buffalo offense is clearly better, but Xavier Leggett has a pathway into more workload. So overall, those are fun bets. Tyrone Tracy, Ty Chandler. Both of them are backups with upside to take on more role. Like Ty Chandler could push Aaron Jones. Tyrone Tracy could push Motor Singletary. The difference is like Tracy's getting the kick return for your uses. So you're getting Tracy and Turpin back-to-back. That's a really nice kick returner. Guys, you can flex. I really like how you attacked these late-round kick returners because you were like, screw it, give me all the kick returners. I did something very similar. Because like the thing with the kick returners is like the floor is really high. The ceiling is also really high. If one of these guys takes on a bigger role, like a Trey Tucker who's playing a role on offense, or a Darius Davis or Devin Duvernay, any of these guys play someone of a role offensively, they'll be like gangbusters for you points per game wise. Duvernay, I'm not sure if he's the returner. So this is the whole issue with Duvernay. It's him or Agnew because Agnew's still on the roster. He's a really good returner. We will see how that shakes out. Just keep it up. But overall, Duvernay, Davis, Tucker, Cordero Patterson, Kenny Nwangu taking advantage of what the format rewards, and that's kick returners, man. Like the kick returners have a chance to break the scoring this season because of how we're going to see such a boom in return yardage this year. So overall, I really like where you went. You gave yourself the higher floor plays in the beginning. You took a couple upside shots, and then the back half of the draft is what you should be doing is just hammering guys. It's either falling value guys that are falling well past ADP or the upside shot of these kick returners where, like we said, you only need one tight end, you only need a running back, only one wide receiver, right? One quarterback, you could flex anything. So as many flex plays as you want to play, whatever position. This is what I like what Scott Fishbowl did specifically this year. Basically, it was like kitchen sink league did, where it's like you can play a bunch of returners if you want. You can play a bunch of kickers if you want on NFL. You can play a million wide receivers. You can he gave you the options to do whatever you want. So really investing in kick returners, I think, is the skeleton key to this season. If those guys, they don't even have to hit. They just have to be just solid kick returners, and they will be guys that you can count on week in and week out because we're going to see a lot more return yards. So that's well done. That's really just diving into the format, and that's what this is all about. It's all having fun and just saying screw it. I'm playing YOLO ball because why not? You're going against 4,000 plus people. Let's be real. You're not gonna win. But let's shout out to Boss Hog here. I'm gonna do it. This will be the last one, and then we'll get to Steve's later on in the week. I will make it my mission to get through all of these Scott Fishbowl rosters. If nobody else on the FFU do it, I will do it. So bear with me here, folks. So we're gonna go to the Boss Hog, the Heel Daddy 21, and the King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. Ooh, that is a classic movie. I remember King Arthur and the Knights of Justice, the cartoon in the 90s. I used to watch as a little kid. I used to be so hyped for it. I'd be like, King Arthur. My mom's like, what are you watching? I'm like, King Arthur and the Knights of Justice. She's like, what the heck is that? I'm like, I don't know. There's like a wizard. There's Merlin. There's the knights. They go hunt stuff. It's fun. I was like an 8-year-old kid, right? Like, I just love that stuff. But let's go to this roster. Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is the King Arthur of your roster. He is holding it down. Jahmyr Gibbs is the Merlin of your roster. You know that guy's a wizard. He can hit for you big time. Dalton Kincaid. I'm running out of names here. Dalton Kincaid's Lancelot. We'll go with that. I'm running out of names here after that. Chris Olave. Chris Olave has a pretty wide range of outcomes. So sorry, I can't continue with the names. I'm blanking on the rest of them for that. But Chris Olave has a pretty massive range of outcomes. With them changing the scheme and more forcing downfield, which they have Shaheed, they have Chris Olave, which are two downfield threats. I really like those guys at cost. Like Chris Olave, wide receiver 12. Like, if you look at him compared to like Garrett Wilson or Drake London, like I don't see much difference between those guys. The only difference is I like those quarterbacks better. So if Carr is better than we expect, Olave has a pathway into being a really high-end wide receiver for you. And he doesn't have the concerns that Ayuk has due to like lack of volume or stuff like no, they don't have that many good weapons in that offense. So Olave will get fed. It's just Derek Carr needs to get his needs to not just be such a weirdo sometimes about like these choice routes and not running them. It's like those are just dummy routes. Like when he was yelling at Chris Olave, it made no sense last year. Where he's like, run the route. Chris Olave is like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Because if you watch across the NFL, quarterbacks do not care about that stuff because that's just a dummy route. But anyways, here nor there. Tua Tagovailoa, we talked about Tua. That's a little bit very valuable in the 5th. I would like to get him a little bit later, but you're locking up a solid QB2. What I like what you did though is you took Geno. Usually I'm against the QB3, but like with a quarterback as good as Geno, like he gives you pathway into that 20 points per game, like production from a quarterback. Like, am I going to be shocked if Geno outproduces Tua? No. That's one of the few quarterbacks, like opposed to like a Bryce Young or those guys. Like we need to see them be good. We've already seen Geno be really good, and this might be my homerism coming through, but everything we've heard out of, and you hike all the metrics that support how good of a quarterback Geno Smith is. It's all about the line can stay healthy. If they can stay healthy and protect Geno Smith, he will be a really good quarterback for you. So I think towards the end of the year, like Geno and Tua are going to be a lot closer in points per game than people expect. I think that's a really good value for you there. Tank Dell, really fun player to bet on. He's CJ Stroud's guy. And so getting him at wide receiver 22, we talk about betting on the Houston Texans offense to take a jump this year. You want those guys. And he also has a pathway to play kick return usage. And like if he's getting kick return usage on top of his usage, Tank Dell's going to be a hell of a lot of fun. George Pickens, he's the one guy Pittsburgh I really want to bet on. T. Higgins, like he's fallen to the point where like that's good value. He just needs to stay healthy. Like with T. Higgins, that's where you need him to be. So just stay healthy for a season. T. Higgins, let's see you stay healthy, run through the whole season. I would love that because he's probably one of the best at like jump ball wide receivers in the NFL. Like he's that power forward that absolutely just dunks on fools. Like that's what he does really well. Like we've seen Higgins do that time and time in his career. McLaurin, another guy that's discounted. Christian Watson, a guy that could be – those two guys could pay off massive for you. The range of outcomes of both of those guys feels huge. Terry McLaurin and Jaden Daniels offense with a bad defense and like it's an air raid offense they're going to be running, right? Like I know they say they're not going to run it, but like it's Cliff Kingsbury. You know the offense they're going to run, right? It's going to be no huddle. They're going to be moving fast paced. So what does that mean? A lot of plays for Terry McLaurin to make plays. So we like that. Christian Watson attached to one of our quarterbacks in the NFL. Like it's a fun bet. Ezekiel Elliott is similar to Gus Edwards. He's like a floor play. I don't mind him here. I just wish you'd get him a little bit later as well. Ben Sinnott, it's really early for a tight end that we don't know when he's going to be starting. That's the whole issue with Ben Sinnott. If you're telling me Ben Sinnott's starting tight end, like he would be like week 1, he would be going a lot earlier than that. Now, tight end is a really difficult position to learn. So when you're not talking about the Brock Bowers of the world, these truly special like Kyle Pitts prospects, these guys, like it's going to take them some time. Like this is why they brought in Zach Ertz so he can learn, like similar to what they did with Dallas Goedert, similar to what we've seen with Trey McBride. Like these guys are learning under a veteran, like a quality NFL tight end in Zach Ertz. So I get it. I like the upside shot of Kamani Vidal. There is multiple ways for him to get on the field and beat that AP. Xavier Gibson, you can just flex him immediately. Like you know what you're getting out of that. There's upside for him in there. Jelani Woods, it's an upside shot on a tight end in an offense that is going to run a lot of plays. I don't know how many like targets he's going to see just because he needs to run all the routes. Is he going to do it? maybe they like him, so we'll see. But he's another guy that's dealt with injuries a lot, so he just needs to stay healthy. Jake Elliott's a really good kicker. You know what you're getting. Tucker Kraft is like, can he stay healthy? Is he going to be on the field? I don't know. It's kind of similar to the Ben Sinnott situation. It's a guy fighting to get on the field and be the tight end 1, but he's more or less the tight end 2 in the offense for the time being. But people like Tucker Kraft, I don't mind taking a shot late. Like, we're getting into the 20s here. Like, it's a fine pick. If you believe in him, this is the time you take shots on guys you believe in. Dylan Labe, a guy that's going to give you some return usage on top of being involved in the offense. It's fine. Jacob Cowling could be a return guy. A.T. Perry, you're taking a shot in a New Orleans offense that's pretty uncertain. So maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. I don't think it's going to work for A.T. Perry, but I don't mind the shot there. So, yeah. So that is going to wrap it up for today. We're pushing almost 2 hours here today. So thank you all for joining me. I know we're doing a ton of Scott Fishbowl stuff. This is what we were diving into because this is what everyone was like, hey, give us more Scott Fishbowl stuff. So we're happily doing it. And what it comes down to is we're supporting charity. Like, we're doing Toys for Tots, all that fun stuff with Scott Fishbowl. So I want to thank you all for spending the time with us. Make sure if you if you could like, comment, subscribe to the channel. We very much appreciate all your patronage, all your comments. You give us feedback, we'll happily take it and reward. And we'll use that into what we're doing in the future because we got a ton of stuff coming up. Like tomorrow, we're doing the Pirate League draft. We're doing some other things we're going over. We're doing some more Aaron's like team series. We're covering the rest of the NFL teams. I'm going to be joining him, I think, for the Lions. I'm not 100% sure. One of those teams. We're going to be doing that. But yeah, so for myself, for Aaron, for Jeremy, for SC, for the rest of the FU, I want to thank y'all for joining us. Make sure you follow us on all the platforms, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, which if you're watching us on one of these channels, you already know that. But for that, I'm just going to quit rambling. We're going to wrap it up. Enjoy the rest of y'all Saturday. I hope you have a good week, and I will see you all tomorrow.